So welcome everyone. My name's Tina McIntyre. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent at the UF IFAS Extension in Seminole County. And today we are joined by a variety of experts, and we'll introduce them to you as we go through the day. We're going to start with Dr. Esen Momol, who's going to start off telling us what is Florida Friendly. So we are very lucky to have her. She actually runs the statewide program with the University of Florida IFAS Extension in partnership with Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So welcome, Dr. Esen Momol. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. As Tina pronounced my name, Esen Momol, head of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. Our state office is located at University of Florida campus in Gainesville, as most of you know. This morning, what I will do is just in a nutshell, talk about the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. I am very happy to hear that you guys heard of Florida Friendly Landscaping and you know the distinction between xeriscaping and Florida Friendly Landscaping. Chapter 373, 185 of Florida Statute defines Florida Friendly Landscaping as quality landscapes that conserve water, protect the environment, and are adaptable to local conditions and are drought tolerant. Additional practices such as landscape planning and design, soil analysis, appropriate use of soil waste, compost, and proper maintenance also are included in that chapter. We teach and train Floridians about our 9 science-based core principles. These are right plant, right place, water efficiently, fertilize appropriately, mulch, attract wildlife, manage yard pests responsibly, recycle yard waste, and reduce stormwater runoff. And the last one, protect the waterfront. We teach our audiences that there is no one prescribed design for Florida friendly landscaping. Any landscape can be Florida friendly if it is designed and maintained according to our 9 core principles and practices. Well, this is not Florida friendly landscaping. Let me switch the gears and give you a brief history of the program. When the nitrogen pollution was detected in Florida's waters, and especially in coastal waters like Indian Lagoon, there was a nitrogen pollution there. And Marine Resources Council created Eco-Neighborhoods program to educate homeowners about sustainable landscape practices. Later, in 1993, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, funds coming from US EPA, partnered with University of Florida to create Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Homeowner Program to educate homeowners about sustainable landscape practices. In 2009, when Senate Bill 2080 passed, Department of Environmental Protection created Florida Friendly Landscaping umbrella to include green industries best management practices, which addresses commercial audiences. We started out with 4 counties in 1993 and expanded to 51 counties as of now. But with Master Gardener's help and assistance, I'm proud to say that we are active and operating all over the state. Florida Friendly Landscaping has 3 major sub-programs under this umbrella: Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Program, Florida Friendly Communities Program, and Green Industries Best Management Practices Program. Every program's target audiences are different, but we teach 9 core principles for all 3 programs. Florida Yards and Neighborhoods target audiences are homeowners, gardeners, and youth, whereas Florida Friendly Communities target audiences are municipalities, builder developers, property managers, community associations, and green industry programs basically teach and train landscape maintenance professionals. How is the implementation of our program? As you may know that Florida Department of Environmental Protection, we have IFAS extension and stakeholders like water management districts, industry like FNGLA, we are all partners on this game. Florida State Office receives major funding from Department of Environmental Protection. And at the end of the day, we all teach Florida-friendly landscaping principles. State office staff, master gardener volunteers, extension agents, industry, and other members of IFAS extension. We have several educational resources. We launched a brand new website recently. It can be found in that link in T4 format. It includes all these publications, and some of the publications are view and download and printed. And these are all on our webpage, and it can be ordered through online. And also those major books are available in hard copies in your local county extension offices as well as in the state office. We do also have 4 mobile web applications: FFL Plant Guide mobile web application, Butterfly Gardens mobile web application, Florida Fertilizer, and Poisonous Plant app applications. Florida Friendly Landscaping mobile web plant application, we have more than 400 plants in that application and can be searchable by plant type or by plant properties. Florida Friendly Landscaping Butterfly Garden app has both host and nectar plants, and it has very unique feature as well that you can design your butterfly garden based on the size of the garden. Florida Fertilizer Ordinances app is very important app for commercial audiences. Whoever is apply fertilizer, it's going to be very handy for them to use. It can be searchable by city, county, and address, and also uses Google's web engine. And fertilizer ordinance contains blackout dates, other major restrictions, and also includes link for the full Minicode or website as a PDF. Poisonous Plant web application has more than 200 plants that may be poisonous to human and animals. Florida Friendly Landscaping, you can be found in web page to online CEUs. We have CEUs for different landscape maintenance professionals. These CEUs about Florida Friendly Landscaping, legislature, introduction, maintenance, recognition, irrigation, lawn and landscape BMPs. Within 6 months, 373 professionals received CEUs through this program. And we also launched Florida Friendly Landscaping Certified Professional Programs, which consist of 6 online modules as well as 1 field module. We used to do field module face-to-face. Because of COVID, we created virtual field module. Up to now, we have 83 Florida Friendly Landscaping Certified Professionals trained, and we have 22 certified professional instructors on board. I would like to mention 2 major marketing efforts that we have in our program. One is radio. Florida Friendly Landscaping in a Minute radio show broadcasts in 19 radio stations, and it gives Florida Friendly Landscaping principles within a 60-second. This is really amazing. And another major marketing effort is TV show. Within 8 hours, we are flipping traditional yard to Florida Friendly Landscaping. And we completed 10 episodes, and we are in negotiation with DEP to sign the contract for the 2nd season. You may ask the question that where should I get additional information about FFL, guidance, trainings, webinars, educational resources? You may need to contact your local extension office. And also you can contact to FFL state office. give you a few success stories about Florida-friendly landscaping. As I mentioned that our program is science-based. We deliver science-based 9 core principles to public. We conducted a research in University of Florida campus. We compare Florida-friendly yard with the traditional yard. Florida-friendly yard consists of 25% turf grass, 75% plants, whereas traditional yard consisted of just the opposite, 25% plant beds and 75% turf. After the 3 years of repeated experiments, we were able to show that FFL yard was saving up to 83% water compared to traditional. We have several success stories within the state of Florida. Both include condominium associations and homeowners associations. Just give an example that a couple of condo associations, one is in Citrus County Retirement Facility, just implementing few basic principles of Florida-friendly landscaping regarding irrigation. They were able to save about 855,000 liters in the first month, and then more than 10 million for the first year. And Dorchester, Palm Beach, they were able to retrofit the smart irrigation, install micro irrigation, reduce irrigation timings, and they were able to save more than 3 million liters of water and save $6,000 in the cost of labor. Another community is that Ocean Gallery, which is located in St. Johns County. They implemented low volume irrigation. They installed soil moisture sensors and replaced the turf, which is difficult to maintain in some areas with ground cover. And they reported that their savings was 37 million gallons of water and $16,000 within 2 years. Royal Stewart's Arms Condominium Association. They implemented right plant, right place, install micro irrigation, reduce irrigation timing, and implement also smart irrigation controller. And they saved more than 13 million liters of water within first 9 months. After 2 years, that saving went up to 38 million, and the cost of saving was $31,000. And I would like to show you before and after pictures. As you know, Florida-friendly landscaping is a sustainable landscape. At the same time, it's aesthetically appealing, as you can see. Tamarin Village Community Association, which is located in Broward County, consists of 117 homes. By implementing FFL practices, they saved more than $16,000 on water and $12,000 fertilizer cost savings, and pesticides was $5,000 that based on their report. Well, I have to show you this infographic because it's very, very important about our impact. In 2020, more than 100,000 residents and landscape professionals participated in water conservation programs taught by UFI Extension faculty. And follow-up survey results show that 77% reduced irrigation to 2 days a week, 75% reduced irrigation if there's enough rainfall, and 59 used rain gauge to track the rainfall, and 53% reduced irrigation in winter months, and 50% reduced irrigation in summer months. At the end, we were proud to report more than 300 million gallons of water saved, and this water was enough for almost 4,000 households with water for 1 year. Okay, I am switching the gears completely now and go to Florida-friendly landscaping legislature. Florida Yards and Neighborhoods and Green Industries Best Management Practices both are in the statute. FYN, which is in chapters 373-185 and 720-3975, is voluntary. strongly encouraged, but it's not mandatory, whereas GIBMP is mandatory. Anyone who applies fertilizer commercially has to be trained, certified, and licensed through Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Those individuals, professionals, has to be trained in urban landscape pest management practices. Well, who's gonna provide this training? By statute, Florida Department of Environmental Protection in cooperation with UF-IFAS shall provide training and testing programs. So this is a mandatory training. Let me give you a few highlights of voluntary but strongly recommended chapter 373. No longer references xeriscaping. Yes, xeriscaping is no longer in the statute. It was before 2009. Homeowner association, covenants, codes, and restrictions, as well as local ordinances may not prohibit any homeowner to implement Florida-friendly landscaping practices. There is one major catch here, that it does not invalidate HOA architectural control and landscape committees. It also prohibits any watering mandates that violate water management district water use restrictions. All right, quiz time. Does the law allow a homeowner to retrofit their yard by removing turf without HOA's permission? Put your answers, please, on the chat box, yes or no. Very simple. So homeowner can go ahead and just retrofit the yard without contacting their HOAs? No. The statute does not invalidate architectural committees, as I mentioned. Do HOA review boards have authority to tell homeowners what they can and they cannot plant? Yes or no? Look forward to your answers. Yes. If the review board is permitted to do so through their covenants or deed restrictions. However, some covenants and deed restrictions does not have a plant list. Okay, this is another story that we can just do the discussion on. Can HOA require a homeowner to keep turf grass green year-round? Yes or no? No. As you all know, turf grass stops growing in winter months. This is natural phenomenon of the plant. It turns brown, and none of the HOAs can require you to keep your grass green during winter. Is the Florida-friendly landscaping program designed for homeowners or commercial use? Both. I just show you the structure of the program. Yes, the answer is both, homeowners and commercial. If the yard recognized as Florida-friendly landscape, do HOA restrictions apply? This is a tricky question. Yes or no? So I put the Florida-friendly landscape signage on your yard. Then HOA may have rules. So are you protected from HOA deed restrictions or HOA landscape rules if you have FFL signage on your yard? Well, designation of FFL is used as an educational and promotional tool for this program. HOA rules take precedence, regardless of when the homeowner awarded FFL recognition. So FFL recognition doesn't protect you if HOA sues you. Does the statute address common property owned by HOA? This is a tricky question too. Yes or no? So you have a community with common space Is statutes, rules applicable to those spaces? No, but I just present you the success stories. We have success stories to show HOA board members how much cost savings it would be as a result of implementing Florida-friendly landscape. With that, please put your questions in the chat box. Thank you very much. And this is our FFL State Office staff. With that, I will stop sharing.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Esen Momol. That was really, I think, thought-provoking and educational for a lot of our participants. So thank you so much for bringing those questions to light for us to learn. Great, so I'm just getting my presentation set up here. Excellent, and y'all are doing a great job using the chat for any chit chat or answering any questions, and the question and answer section for any questions that you might have about our presentations or really anything Florida friendly. So I'm Tina McIntyre. I'm Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent with the University of Florida IFAS Extension. And I'm here in Seminole County, and we have a lot of people come to our Master Gardener Clinic help desk with their residential issues. I personally help landscape architects, community association managers, HOAs, board of directors, and residents help with their landscaping problems. So I'm so excited to talk to you today about these common landscaping issues and how can we avoid these problems in the first place. You know, Florida Friendly is all about an ounce of prevention is really a pound of cure. And we do this through these 9 Florida Friendly principles. So I'm going to walk through some of these today. What I don't touch on, I believe Claire will actually in the next hour talk about a lot of the other ones. But I'm going to be highlighting right plant, right place, which we all need to learn a little bit more about, watering efficiently, fertilizing appropriately, and mulch, along with management. So starting off with right plant in the right place. We live in Florida. And so, you know, Florida has a unique and interesting geological past where it was underwater for a very long period of time. We didn't have that natural deposition of leaves and organic material occurring over millennia. It was a much shorter period in geologic time. And so we have very sandy soils. We're essentially a beach that's been, you know, afloat for a little while. We're hot. We have chances of freezes in some parts of the state. We have our rainy season, which is just about to begin. Hurricanes, lakes, rivers, and streams abound throughout the state. And so we're very closely living to all these water bodies. And again, we were underwater. So we have the majority of our state is exceptionally sandy. So we have a unique environment. And if you've moved here from somewhere else, it's important that we take the time to understand our site and understand our conditions so that we can better select plant species. And we do this through site assessment and these variety of ways. And we do have a free book that I'll put in the chat box, which is our Florida Friendly Guide to Landscaping and Plant Selection. And in there is page 32. Page 32 walks you through all the various areas that you can consider for Florida Friendly. So it could be the region in the state that you're in. And again, we are all zooming in from various locations. It might be your cold hardiness zone. So does that mean you're going to be having the chance of freeze? Or maybe not. Maybe you're looking for a native Florida plant. We want to consider the growth rate, the height, and the spread of the plant, the soil pH, which can inhibit the absorption of nutrients, soil texture. So some parts of the state do have clay. Most of us are sandy. How much moisture is in the soil? So do you irrigate the area? Is it low-lying? Did it used to be a wetland? These all factor in. Of course, the common ones we think of are, you know, drought tolerance, maybe light optimum. Is it full sun, full shade, super shady environment with those large towering trees? If you're by the coast, maybe some salt tolerance. And then also, do you want to attract wildlife? Or maybe you have a plant that is attracting wildlife, and that could be an issue. Like here we have our bear ordinance zone. So, here we can see we want to, we have the wrong plant in the wrong place. So we want to consider the mature size of the plants before planting or constructing around them. So somebody really loved this palms, and I feel like this is my neighbor's house. He has a palm that's, so large, and it's right in the middle of his patio, and it's constantly needing to be pruned. So we want to think about the width and the height and always give that plant enough room to grow to full size. Again, here we're seeing the wrong plant in the wrong place, where somebody wanted little meatballs and instead they planted something that wants to be a larger tree. And they're meatballing these large shrubs and it just doesn't fit with the house. They're taking over. Again, here, wrong plant, wrong place. We're not considering, we want to consider replacing these plants that are going to need excessive pruning to maintain that shape that we're looking for, when we can just certainly select a plant that's going to grow into that shape. Like our ilex shillings is just naturally grows to be a meatball, and you need to just shear it occasionally. So select those species that are more suited to what you're looking for. Now, I know a lot in our HOAs, they do use annuals a lot, and that's okay. There's some annuals that are going to be more suitable for our hot, rainy climate rather than others that might be just kind of sold. So you want to consider those hardy annuals along with perennials that can constantly beautify your landscape. So what is an annual and what is a perennial? An annual is something that lives for one cycle, meaning it usually lives about 1 year or one cycle, one season, and it's going to come from the seed, bloom, and then essentially put more seeds out, maybe, and then die. Where a perennial is going to have multiple cycles. It's going to usually live for several years, usually 2 to 3 or more, and it's going to flower multiple times, produce multiple seeds, and really give you more bang for your buck just in general. So what are some hardy annuals? Well, starting here on the left, on the bottom left, we have our black-eyed Susan or Rudbeckia. These are great Florida native wildflowers that look gorgeous, in any landscape. And they're not only going to be good visually, but they're hardy in our soils, and they're great for pollinators, which is really important. Here at the top left, we have our Penta. Penta is not a native plant, but it does very well in our landscapes, and it's commonly available. We have Coleus, and again, these are all full sun Florida, hardy annuals. Coleus is good. You're not going to get a whole lot of from the flower, but the leaves have really nice color that can be added to a landscape. Then we have Sweet Alyssum. This actually smells wonderful and can add a little beautiful ground cover to any landscape, and it's also going to bring that fragrance. And finally, we have our Gaillardia or blanket flower. This is another one that's usually more readily available. All of these are pretty commonly available at your nursery or box store. And Gaillardia is, really, it's called the blanket flower because it tends to reseed and it will propagate itself in the area, which is really nice because you plant it once and it's going to come back seasonally. And a lot of our native wildflowers are going to be doing that. So what if you say, well, I have shade, Tina? Well, we do have some hardy annuals for shade. We have, starting with the left, caladiums. Then we have twin flower. This is actually a Florida native. This is going to be more of a ground cover. And this is more part shade, so it does need a little bit of at least dappled sun going on. But that's a really great Florida native. I have it in my yard. It grows under a tree very well. Purple coneflower. This can grow in full sun, but it also will take part shade. And then begonias. Begonias are great as long as, there is one species, which I can't remember right now, that is invasive. It's more of an aquatic version. As long as you're selecting the begonias that are readily available at your nursery, you should be good. So now thinking about maintenance practices, which really go hand in hand with that right plant, right place. So the top two stressors for our turf are going to be improper amounts of water and mowing too short. So I'm going to start off by focusing on irrigation. So if you can do any two things to have healthy turf, It's focusing on how much water you're applying to the landscape, and that includes rain, and making sure that you're not mowing and scalping the grass. So we're going to start off with our best mowing practices. So here you can see different types of species of turf like to be mowed at different heights. So if you have St. Augustine, that desires about 3.5 to 4 inches. If you drop it down lower than that, you say, well, I'm busy. I only, the mowing company is coming and they just want to, take it all the way down, and they take it down to an inch or two. That is stressing out the turf. Then you're inviting in, disease, viruses, fungus, things like that. You're going to be more susceptible to pathogens. Zoysia prefers 1.5 to 2.5 inches, and Bahia grass is about 3 to 4. There's other practices that you can also look for when you're mowing grass. So mow at that recommended height, like I said. Don't mow more than 1/3 of the blade. So if you went on vacation or it's been a while since the landscaper comes, you want to just take 1/3 of that blade and then come back in a few days and get the rest of it. You don't want to remove it because, again, it's a shock to the turf. Leave those grass clippings on the turf. Not only is this Florida friendly because we don't want to put them down the storm drain or on paved surfaces, but we definitely want to make sure that we're harvesting those nutrients and putting them back into our soil. The organic matter is going to help. Don't mow when it's wet. Keep those mower blades sharp and use a mulching blade as well. So when we look at this area, we can see that there's a steep slope and enough that there's stairs incorporated into this landscape. Turf on a slope must be maintained with a hand trimmer. We want to consider replacing it with a ground cover. So something that maybe is flowering, it could be, a short ground cover, 6 inches or maybe a foot, but that it's vegetating this slope so that we don't get erosion, but it's also a low maintenance plant. So maybe even some of our native bunching grasses like muley grass could be a good selection. So considering smaller areas of turf around your HOA or home, small areas of turf require extra maintenance, such as needing special irrigation. It can be really difficult to water this little strip of turf while also not irrigating this pavement, right? Also mowing. So we're not going to be able to use a mower in this instance. We're going to have to use a hand trimmer. Edging obviously takes extra edging, and then fertilization. How are we going to use our fertilizer spreader in an area like this without causing non-point source pollution or, getting that fertilizer so we have to clean it up on this paved surface? So again, we want to think about using bunching grasses or other ground covers in those hard to manage areas. Planting too close to the foundation. So this can happen in our communal areas, around our golf club, clubhouses, and also around our homes. We want to think about those shrubs being planted outside of the drip line. So for example, here's a home or a building. We have a gutter system and an eave of the house. You want to make sure that your plant is not planted under the eave because it's not going to be able to get that water from the rain. And also it's just going to be too close to your house. You want to make sure that you're giving that at least 3-foot center for the root ball. And again, these are showing smaller plants. If you're planting a big plant, then you need to do even more space. Otherwise, you're going to be jeopardizing that foundation. And then proper pruning. So we do see this a lot of the times in our HOAs where we're really harming our trees. These crepe myrtles, really want to be in their full glory and they want to grow to their full size. They do not need to be pruned. Actually, we have a EDIS publication that I can share with you where it refers to them as crepe murder because over time we're wounding the plant and requiring it to compartmentalize that improper pruning. Really, crepe myrtles need little to no pruning at all, and they're quite beautiful when they're allowed to grow to full size. Irrigation. So again, I mentioned that the top 2 stressors for turf are mowing too short or other cultural practices and improper amounts of watering. So here you can see, this is actually out of the University of Florida IFAS GEO plan, who did it in conjunction with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and Thousand Friends of Florida. Here up in the top, you can see our growth as of 2010. So we're calling that the baseline. And you can see there's various things. So red is considered developed land. We have agriculture protected, but not agriculture. So that might be our green spaces, our wilderness areas here in Seminole County. And then as we look out how Florida is going to grow over time, we look at that trend. So if we stay on the same pace, we're going to get what we see in the bottom left. We're going to get lots more development, a reduction in agricultural lands, and a reduction in green spaces. If we do take measures to have a conservative approach to growth, we see less development, but we do still see a much increased development, especially in the Central Florida area. This is important to keep in mind because water is a precious, finite resource, fresh water. And so the Central Florida Water Initiative is a collaboration between our 3 largest water management districts in the state. So that's our St. Johns River Water Management District, South Florida Water Management District, and I believe the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, along with other environmental organizations, businesses, agricultural communities, stakeholders, and other governmental agencies. And they've said that we have enough water through 2035, but we're actually going to be deficient. So we have the 800 million gallons per day, which you're seeing here at the bottom in blue. We can access an extra 50 million gallons per day in our traditional groundwater resources, but we're actually going to be deficient and have a potential need of 250 million gallons per day. And this is projecting out on that growth by 2035 that we're going to need 1,100 million gallons per day as that growth increases. So we're going to have that deficiency, the 250 million gallons per day, that can only be really met by integrating conservation. And so we want to make sure that we're following the irrigation best practices. They're not only good for our environment and for our future generations, but they're typically in line with the University of Florida IFAS extension best management practices that research shows it's good for your turf. Overwatering can lead to many problems, which I'll get to. So every system must have an operating device in the system. You must test the operation of each device in the system. Must install new ones or repair existing ones and confirm proper operating condition. And again, this is the Florida law. When we look at water conservation, we see that 50 to 60% of our home water use does take place in the landscape. So it's important to turn the water off when we're brushing our teeth, but it's paramount that we calibrate our irrigation. And again, it's the right thing to do for healthy turf. So when we have too much or too little water, we're compromising our root system. When we're overwatering, we're actually creating a rotting and fungus environment for our turf. Pest problems increase. We get an increase of thatch, which needs to be removed and can really smother the turf if too much is occurring. We have drought tolerance decrease. There's a natural drought tolerance that can be activated in our turf by reducing that irrigation. And then again, we also get an increase in weeds. So we see more dollar weed, we see more other pests integrating. It's also important that each system, it's actually the law, have a shutoff device and that we're not watering between the hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So again, this is the Florida law that each one have a rain shutoff and that we do not water between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So you might say, well, how much irrigation should I be putting on my turf? I can't tell you because everybody has different rotors and different systems. I can't tell you the magical amount of time, but I can tell you the amount. And that's 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch per application per zone. If you're in the St. Johns River Water Management District, we have watering once a week during November through March, and April through October, it's twice a week. Your local water management district might have different restrictions, so definitely check with them. And UF-IFAS actually recommends for the central and north part of the state that during cooler months, while the grass is not actively growing, you only need to water every 10 to 14 days. Now, again, that's different for South Florida, so check with your local extension, but be sure to consider that. So looking at the irrigation system, you're going to see pop-up sprayers, rotors, and then micro irrigation. Rotors are typically used for turf, for irrigating large areas of turf. Pop-up sprayers can be used for smaller areas of turf or landscape beds. Micro irrigation, which I'll talk more about, is really fantastic for our landscape beds and can be really adjusted as needed. Micro irrigation delivers water slowly, minimizing water loss. It's 90% efficiency, whereas in those traditional rotor and pop-up sprayers can be about 50 to 70% efficiency. So if you're looking to save on your water bill, definitely going to micro is a great switch. And typically these are exempt for your local water conservation code, so you can run it more often during drought if you need to. Of course, these systems always need to be maintained. So just as you would any other irrigation system, you can have failure susceptible to shovels from our loved ones or landscapers, or maybe even chewing by our animals. So I'm going to show you here a quick video that shows you how to calibrate your irrigation.
Hi, I'm Tina McIntyre, Florida-friendly landscaping agent with the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Seminole County. Today I'm going to teach you how to calibrate your irrigation system so that you can save time and money and be sure that your landscape is receiving the proper amount of water. We definitely want to make sure that we're applying the proper amount of water to our landscape so that we're not watering the weeds, creating a rotting environment, enhancing the fungus, or leaching expensive fertilizers. About 50% of our home water use goes to watering the lawn. So if you have your irrigation set properly, you'll be saving time and money. When planting a landscape, it's best to group plants by their water needs. We recommend your landscape plants and shrubs are on micro irrigation, which will directly water plants at their roots. Most of your sod will be on rotor heads that offer broader coverage. Today I'm going to be showing you what we call the catch can method. You'll need 4 to 5 cat cans or tuna cans that are washed out and a ruler. Place the tuna cans around zone 1 of your lawn randomly. Turn on the irrigation for 15 minutes. When the irrigation turns off, measure the amount of water in the cans using a ruler. You want an average of 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch throughout zone 1. So if after 15 minutes you have 1/4 of an inch, you will need to run the irrigation for 30 to 45 minutes for that zone to reach the desired average of 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. A great way to save water in your landscape is to install a rain sensor. Rain sensors are actually required by law in the state of Florida since 1991. Irrigation is actually a supplement to the rain that falls. So if you're having a really wet and rainy day or rainy week, you can really pull back on your irrigation, and rain sensors can help you to do that. There's also the option of a soil moisture sensor, which can detect the amount of water that's in your soil and help you to adjust the system accordingly. It's important to consult your manual for the brand of irrigation that you have. Each brand will have different start dates, times, and run times, and how to set it. So you definitely want to check with your manual to see what the best way to do it is. New plants will likely need water every day, but most established plants need far less water. When installing new landscapes, be sure that you're checking the irrigation for the first 3 months and recalibrating just to be sure that those new plants are getting the proper amount of water that they need. Another key is to look for signs of wilting in your plants, such as drooping or curled leaves. This indicates you might need to irrigate more in that plant zone or hand water to keep the plant alive. With a well-calibrated irrigation system, a keen eye for checking the needs of your plants, and an installed rain sensor, your plants will be getting the proper amount of irrigation, you'll be protecting the environment, and you'll save money on your water bill. For more information,
Awesome. So thank you all for checking that video out. I just think the catch can method is such an easy tool that we can all use. It just takes maybe 15 to 20 minutes to calibrate one zone. And most of the time you can be scrolling on your phone or chatting with a friend. So now I'm going to go over some other irrigation issues that might be occurring in your landscape. So here you can see that the irrigation head is actually being blocked. And I would just like to say that most of these photos are compliments of Jim Davis. So thank you to him for supplying those. You want to avoid blocking your irrigation head. So as the plants grow, this is likely to occur. And it can inhibit the turf from being properly irrigated. So you want to make sure that that's not occurring in your landscape. So here you can see an irrigation head. This would need to be either extended on a riser or need to prune those shrubs back so that the turf can receive the irrigation that it's intending to receive. You want to install a low volume irrigation for landscape plantings. Some of the times as that vegetation grows up, you can even just cut back the irrigation entirely. If it's a Florida friendly plant like a wax myrtle or something like that, it might need little to no irrigation. Another thing could be excessive pressure. If you're seeing water mists or a pattern, the pattern becomes distorted in the irrigation, you might have excessive pressure issues where you're wasting water. So you want to install pressure regulated body head sprayers and valve pressure regulators. Another thing is keeping those donuts clean or even installing donuts. Some systems don't have the donuts and they're super cheap and easy to get at a landscaping store. Install these donuts so that protects that irrigation head from the truck of a wheel or the kid running through the neighborhood or things like that, so that that is protected, and then being sure to maintain those donuts to keep them clean because the turf can grow over them. So cleaning up that donut can be a simple way. And that's actually what was happening here, where the turf there was nothing, everybody comes to us and says, what can I spray on it? What disease is it? Sometimes it's just our irrigation issues. So cleaning up that donut, fixing that spray head. Here you can see, again, this looks like what some people might think is large patch or a fungal disease, where it's actually just an irrigation issue. And here you can see the buried donut where the grass is green because the water is getting to that area, but beyond where the donut is growing, it's turning brown. And so here is after just a couple months of irrigating properly, cleaning up that donut, you can see that the turf is much healthier. Unclogging filters. This is another really important part. And it's not something, HOAs, I know that you can hire people to help with these issues. And it's something that you can talk to them about. Are we maintaining our irrigation system? And, getting in here, cleaning these filters, making sure that there's not algae growing or things stuck in there. Even bugs, sometimes gnats will go in there and lay their eggs and things. So you want to make sure that they're getting clean. And again, here you can see this is just an irrigation issue that's being resolved and it's being fixed. Replacing overhead sprinklers. So that's another one where you want to dig out the bottom of the sprinkler, dig deeper than the sprinkler bottom to prevent dirt that's going to enter into that pipe. And you don't want to cut the pipe. You want to unscrew the old sprinkler, apply that Teflon tape to riser thread heads, and screw on the new sprinkler. Turn the circuit on and adjust the sprinkler direction and range. So you can actually replace those heads. And then you might have some pipes that get, broken. So we always want to call 811 before we're digging, but sometimes that doesn't happen and a pipe might actually be cracked or broken, and we're seeing that on our water bill. You want to dig out around and under the leak, install the new section with the metalling couplings, flush piping by removing the sprinkler head and running the circuit, Reinstall removed head and check the operation. And then very important is to backfill or cover the hole before leaving the area. So again, a simple maintenance of your irrigation is going to help with that. Now looking at fertilizing. Over-fertilizing can lead to issues with our turf, but also non-point source pollution. And Claire will talk about our stormwater ponds. When we're getting excess nutrients in our stormwater ponds, we can have issues with nutrients and algae and things like that. So proper fertilizing within the community is really paramount, not only for our turf and landscapes and the health of our plants, but for our surrounding stormwater ponds and for our beautiful waterways. I'll start off with a quick note about weed and feed. So weed and feed is actually the combination of a fertilizer and a pesticide, and it's applying both of those at the same time. UF-IFAS Extension does not recommend that because we want to be fertilizing and pesticiding if necessary at different times of the year. So if we have weeds in our yard and we're going to need some kind of pesticide or herbicide for those insects or herbs that are growing weeds in the yard, we want to use a pre-emergent herbicide before Valentine's Day. So we're applying that granular pre-emergent before the spring when everything comes to life. And then we want to spot treat as necessary with those weeds that are emerging. When we're fertilizing, and I'll talk more about this, we're fertilizing, in March, April, and May, really. We want to do it as the plants are coming back to life from their dormancy and they're getting that boost from the springtime. And again, weed and feed is doing it all at once. And so it's really the worst of both worlds for your plants. We also want to select a phosphorus-free fertilizer. Now, each area, and we sent the Florida Friendly apps, I definitely recommend that fertilizer app because you in your city, county, municipality might have a different fertilizer ordinance, and likely do, than we do here in Seminole County or other parts of the state. However, throughout all the state, phosphorus-free fertilizer is the law. And so all plants need phosphorus. However, almost all Florida soils naturally have the phosphorus plants needed, and therefore it should not be applied. Phosphorus can only be applied if a soil test shows that your yard has a deficiency. And the University of Florida IFAS offers a complete soil test for $10. You can find out the macronutrients, the micronutrients, the pH, and including the phosphorus in your soil to see if you need it. So we don't want to be using a fertilizer, and you can do that with phosphorus, and you can do that by selecting one with a 0 in the middle. Those are those three numbers. The first number is nitrogen, second one is phosphorus, the last one is potassium. We also want to make sure that we're not applying fertilizer when the rain is forecasted. Fertilizing is prohibited in Seminole County when there's a flood, tropical storm, hurricane watch, or warning. And again, this is going to be better for your turf because if we do it before the rain, it's going to all wash out and not benefit our turf. And it's also prohibited when soils are saturated. So this is particular to Seminole County. But again, you can consult the Florida Friendly Landscaping apps, that fertilizer app, to find out what is the law in your county and your municipality. They're all very unique and different. So we do have a restricted period, and it's similar to the surrounding counties in Central Florida, where we have a restricted period where we cannot use nitrogen or phosphorus from June through September. And the University of Florida IFAS does not recommend fertilizing in the cold, dormant months for Central and North Florida. So, it's not illegal, but it's not recommended as a Florida-friendly best management practice. And we are excited that we just recently had one of our HOAs to vote to stop one of the December fertilizers because, again, it's not really needed by the turf. If needed, we want to fertilize in April and in October with a slow release product. So that's when your grass is going to be actively growing and before the dormant season. So here you can see, this is the pervasiveness of algae, where we have excess nutrients from fertilizers that can lead to algae growth in the water body. Algae can form large blooms and lead to fish kills. So we want to be sure that we're not doing that. If you're interested in learning more about fertilizers and how to fertilize effectively, I am offering a class on May 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. You can simply scan the QR code, or I'll chat the link for you to register. And we do have a free bag of fertilizer for all of our Seminole County residents. And we're offering 2 CEUs for our FDEX licensed professionals. So if you have a landscaper and you want them to attend, let them know about it. He's likely, or she is likely excited that they would get 2 free CEUs towards their licensure. And we're also offering 2 free CEUs for FNGLA certified professionals. So those are our Florida Nursery Growers and Landscapers Association people who hold that licensure. So I will chat that as well. Mulch, one of our other Florida friendly principles. It helps to conserve that soil moisture at the root zone. So as we apply 2 to 3 inches of mulch, we're going to be holding that irrigation or rainwater in the root zone so that that plant can enjoy it throughout the rest of the day and week. We're going to add nutrients to our soil slowly and not in large quantities, but little by little. We're going to protect against erosion, reduce weed growth, provide habitat for beneficial soil organisms. So all those little bacteria, worms, fungus, things like that that are growing in our mulch are typically beneficial to the roots of our plants. And we're going to improve the landscape appearance, of course. That's why we can justify doing it in our community, to be able to have all these great landscape and environmental assets, but also aesthetically. One thing we want to be careful is to not volcano mulch. So we don't want to pile the mulch up around the base of the tree trunk. The roots are what needs the mulch, not the trunk of the tree. And the trunk of the tree will actually start to rot, and it'll kill the tree if we're doing that volcano mulching. You want to be careful for that. Another thing that we do not recommend is rubber mulch. Using a rubber mulch does not give you all the benefits of that wood mulch. And so we want to consider, being judicious with using these. It might be good for a playground area or something like that. However, in the landscape, it's not going to benefit our plants. And before I turn it over to Claire here, I'll just leave you with one image, and she's going to talk a lot more about water on our properties. And the downspouts, we want them to be pointed away from our paved surfaces. So driveways, sidewalks, things like that. We want to aim the gutters and the downspouts towards our turf, landscape beds, rocks, and trees. Porous surfaces cannot do let the water soak in, where impervious surfaces flush that water right to become stormwater runoff. And with that, I will take a peek and see. We do have some questions coming in.
Absolutely, Tina. So you have a little extra time. I think it'd be good if we kind of paused and went through a few of these questions. I've kind of held them until after your talk. So I'll let you go ahead and start addressing them. Do you want me to read them to you, or?
Either way, sure. Why don't we do that?
So the first one in the Q&A box that I see is from Kimberly. It says, how, and this may have been for Esen, I'm not quite sure. How can the condo association gain expert consultations, design and install to transition to native and Florida friendly landscapes? And that's a fantastic question. Do you want to answer that, Tina or Esen?
Yeah, I will chime in, and then I hope Esen can chime in too. But essentially, you do have an extension office in all 67 counties. And so I'm here in Seminole. We have offices in every county. I believe a lot of them also have Florida-friendly landscaping as well, that they're there to help you in that transition. And also the state office, so Claire's going to put her contact information in. And, they're really excited to be able to create these success stories. And so if you are interested in making that transition, please do reach out, as we're here to help you.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Another,
Tina.
another question that I think was during Esen's presentation is, can HOAs go against the FFL principles? Are there any statutes they need to adhere to regarding landscaping procedures? That might be one we answer a little later on the panel, if you don't mind.
Panel discussion.
I think that would be a great panel. So I'll kind of try to flag that, or let's all remember to come back to that one.
Perfect. And please do keep them coming into the question and answer section.
The next one is, do mowing companies need to be BMP certified? That's a great question, Tina.
Well,
I love
if
that
they apply
question.
fertilizers, are they going to apply fertilizers? If they do, then they have to.
That's right. So if they are applying fertilizers, they absolutely need to go through that UF-IFAS extension GIBMP training, get that certification, and then go to the Florida Department of Agriculture and get a license. And they have to maintain that license by getting continuing educational units. And so the class that I'm offering in about a week or two, that is a class that they would be able to get those units, so they can stay up to date on all the ordinances and the new technology, the new fertilizer brands and products, so that they can get those CEUs and maintain their license. So it's really important. And I have a great document that I will share with you that we created here for Seminole County, but it walks you through some questions that are really helpful to ask your landscaper and make sure that they are certified. So I'll put that in the chat.
And then there's another one I think we should answer on the panel about their HOA president wants fully grown crepe myrtle trees. And I think that would be a good panel discussion as well. There's one that I certainly don't know the answer to, and it says, do those water projections from the 1000 Friends of Florida and GeoPlan Center, do they include selling our water to the bottling companies? And is that a worry? And I don't know the rationale. I don't know what they included, but if anybody else does.
So the GeoPlan looks in detail, and I can even share that report in the chat. It's a wonderful report that is quite in depth. It looks at agriculture, it looks at water, land use. So I believe that they probably would have included that, as it's all growth, industry, agriculture, residential, everything.
And then Terry asked two related questions, I think, about videos. And one is, does IFAS have any videos on minor irrigation repairs? And then also, does IFAS have any videos how to change out your rotor and sprinkler heads? And I did find two of those. I think there's more. I know I've seen some other ones. I thought I would go ahead and put those in the everybody in the chat box where everybody could see them, because I think those are great questions. And if anybody else who's watching or on the panel knows of any, they can also add other videos. These are the two that I'm was able to find and had seen before. And I did that through a YouTube, a UF or Florida friendly irrigation YouTube search, but I had seen them, so I knew there was something there.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Claire. That's awesome. And I did do a few, and we have some classes coming up. Actually, if you follow Yilin Zhuang on Facebook, she's our regional specialized agent for Central District, and she does Water Wednesdays. And we're also doing an irrigation specific series on Thursdays starting fairly soon. And she's going to have some live Facebook Live Zooms going on that you can also enjoy and look into. So I did chat the lawn care professional checklist that's on the Seminole County website. And, you know, you can definitely check that out. I can do a quick screen share here and just show it real quick. So on this, if you click this link for the lawn care professional, it goes through, you know, are they qualified? Do they have the GIBMP? Do they have those certifications? Are they testing your soil? You know, are they following various fertilizer best management practices, things like that? So it's a really good checklist for your community to use. Again, it's specific to Seminole County, but it still has some of those state requirements in there.
We also have, and that's great because there are definitely county specific ordinances that you need to follow. We have one for the state on the website, and maybe someone can put that in the chat box. But if you have a county, go to your county website as well, because those ordinances are very specific.
Yes, and I did chat the Florida Friendly Apps page, so definitely check out all those apps. It's good for plants, it's good for fertilizer ordinances, and they've worked really hard to bring those to you for free. I did just chat the 2070 Geo Plan, so you can get more information on the projected growth statistics. And what else do we have in here, Claire?
Okay, let's see. Does dog urine kill grass?
So I think it depends on the health of the turf. You know, if the turf is weak and not as dense, then it might see, you know, again, we want to be sure that our plants are getting those preventative practices. It's getting the irrigation properly, it's getting the mowing properly, so that it's more resilient to things like an occasional dog pee, you know, or other, you know, fungus and things like that. So I think that that's not really the biggest concern, you know, is the dog urine, is that we want to make sure that we're calibrating our irrigation and making our turf resilient and water wise and resilient to things in the environment like animal urine. So even if it's not dogs, it might be squirrels and things that are going to live in our landscape.
And I think we're getting to the end here, and then I can, you know, then we can move through my presentation so we can get to the panel discussion. So we will have more opportunities to answer these questions, which is what I think is really great about this workshop today. Is I think we intend it to be a very interactive and responsive workshop, and not just us talking to you. Let's see, is using time release fertilizers with nitrates an ordinance loophole?
Can you say that one again?
Is using time release fertilizers with nitrates an ordinance loophole? So I think they're trying to say is, if you use, you know, slow release versus quick release, are you able to go around some of the ordinances?
I think that's a great question. And I would say no in Seminole County. So with our county, we have been partnering with UF-IFAS to recommend a slow release nitrogen product. So slow release is really ideal for turf because as the water accesses it, it's going to provide the nutrients in a slow fashion rather than say like a Miracle Grow, it's going to be all released at once. And so slow release is really the way to go. You know, if the turf is needing it and you know, we're using a soil test and we want to provide it in the right time of year, there's nothing wrong with making sure that we have healthy turf using a slow release product. So in Seminole County, we recommend, and actually the law is 65% or more. And if you ever wonder, well, is my landscaper using a 65% product? What's going on? Just send us a snapshot of the label. We're happy to help you determine, because it can be challenging with all the numbers and the equations and the percentages. So we're here to help you navigate those questions and be sure that we are using a slow release product that's good for our turf and good for the environment. So we recommend in Seminole, we put it down now. So March, April, May, and then June 1st, it's going to release through the rainy season little by little, not in large volumes. Great question.
Fertilizer, okay, I will add one thing though. In some fertilizer ordinances, they require at least 50% slow release, and some of them do not specify, and some of them says maximum is available, maximum percent is available.
Fertilizer is really tricky, and that's a really wonderful thing that Seminole County is offering. I would like to maybe talk to some of the other counties to see if they do that as well, to help people calculate, you know, the amount that they need to apply.
Right. And also we have on our website, I'll put it in the chat, a fertilizer calculator. And so if you know the basic information, you can use this calculator to determine the percentage. And I'll put it in the chat right now. I'm going to also chat our soil testing form. So you can take advantage of that $10 cheap soil test. If you're going to spend $150,000 on palms, you need to do a soil test before. You know, that's paramount. And then along with that is the fertilizer calculator. And we can also email you guys these links so that you have them, but definitely take advantage of them in the chat.
Awesome. All right, well, so let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll get back to the rest of these questions. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yes, and keep the questions coming. We have a 1 hour scheduled for the panel discussion, so we can get to all these wonderful questions and incorporate our panelists.
Okay. I think can you see my screen?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, so as Tina said, you know, she talked about, you know, landscaping and irrigation and all those kind of common issues that you might see and some possible solution. I'm going to talk today about drainage issues and some possible solutions that we might be able to use in both community-wide setting and in some residential settings. So hopefully you'll find this useful, but specifically focusing on drainage. I thought first I would start off by talking about how we end up with some of the problems that we have. And this picture here on the left is an example of an undeveloped natural Florida habitat, pretty typical, you know, and then we cleared the property, making it ready for homes. Then what typically happens is we dig the stormwater pond. And what we'll do is we'll pile up all the soil and the dirt from that pond, and we'll put it aside, and we'll use that saved, you know, soil to, and you know, the dredge and fill to build up the roads and elevate the foundations of the home sites. Then what we have here is the site. It's ready for development. We've got a road pulled out, we've got gutters, we've got sidewalks, just ready for the homes, right? But this building process isn't always conducive for the landscape and plant material that we use. The soil is often builder sand and the fill material. And plants don't typically, you know, that's not typically what they like. They like a loamier, you know, more nutrient rich soil. So that's not what they typically get in new developments. And their soils, in addition, are often compacted due to all the construction activities, all the big trucks that are driving over them, and you know, just all the, you know, all the traffic that's on them. So compacted soil is not ideal for plant growth either. So those are just, you know, some of the kind of baseline things that we deal with in most communities. Oops. So what we see here is a pretty traditional stormwater system, and they are developed to reduce flooding. That's kind of the main reason for for these stormwater ponds. And as you can see, these arrows indicate the drainage. So we've got drainage coming, you know, across this open land in the back, but also you'll see drainage is in between, you know, most of the houses. And what it does is it goes to, you know, the curb and gutter systems. It'll, you know, hit a pipe, and then it'll be piped into the stormwater drain. And then, you know, eventually, you know, it'll stay in this large stormwater pond, and then eventually pop out and go, you know, to, you know, a more natural system or to another drainage system. This image here on the right illustrates an alternative approach to stormwater management. And in this approach, the stormwater is decentralized. So you've got lots of little kind of pocket, and they probably wouldn't be ponds. They would be kind of depressions, you know, lower areas where the storm water would kind of, you know, pause and hopefully have a chance to sink in before it moves on. And in this case, it's moving in this direction here. The advantage of these open drainage systems is that they cost considerably less than the conventional curb and gutter and catch basin design, and they provide better water quality treatment. And if you've ever had a chance to see one of our faculty advisors, his name is Dr. Eben Bean, talk about it, most of our rain events are small. So and it's 1% of them that are these really big stormwater events that these small ones would have a harder time absorbing that water. But for most cases, this type of situation would work really well. Just another illustration of a typical drainage system. You've got your catch basins here. They're piped to kind of a central storm drain system, and then they're piped out to the nearest kind of water body. It just shows you the underground rather than the bird's eye view of it. And I wanted to show this. I thought maybe we could talk about if you might see any problems with this illustration, and please feel free to type them into the chat box if you see anything going on, with this that you find that think that might not be the best for our stormwater system, and it might be adding nutrients. Give you all just a minute to see if anybody feels like playing. But I'll start out with one. Is certainly we have an irrigation system here that's running down the driveway, right? And it should be directed so it's not running off but staying on the turf. Absolutely, I see leaves in the drain and the driveway runoff. Nice grass in the drain, absolutely, right there. So those are some issues, and you guys seem to know about those already. I'm gonna put on a quick video that also illustrates these things.
If stormwater pollution was rubber duckies, it wouldn't matter what went down the storm drains. But it does, because stormwater pollution is not rubber duckies. It's soil, trash, oil, cigarette butts, and pet waste flowing untreated into our water. That's not good for any of us, because we all live downstream. Clean water starts with you.
Just a couple different ways to see the stormwater and non-point source pollution is what that indicates. So swales are an alternative to the curb and gutter system that we were looking at before, where it's curb and gutter to a storm drain and then piped. They can't be used everywhere because, a lack of available space and, housing density. But, where they are, you may have some of these in your community. But when you can use them, what they do is they slow the flow of stormwater, and they allow the water to soak into the ground. They treat the runoff by allowing suspended solids and impurities to settle out of the stormwater and before it reaches that final water source as well. So they're a good alternative. However, swales are generally in the common areas of a community and usually the responsibility of the CDD or the HOA. So maintenance is essential to ensure that the swale functions properly over time. Maintenance suggestions include removing trash, debris, dead plant material, repair any erosion issues that might come up, restore the percolation rate if you need to do this, and that might be disking it or tilling the swale to aerate the bottom so that it still percolates and functions properly. You want to maintain the swale blocks and outlets in the pavement. You want to check for erosion and structural integrity of these items. You want to mow, keeping the grass 3 to 5 inches long. Typically, swales are going to be, bahia in these common areas, but keeping the grass longer is a good idea. And of course, you want to prune vegetation that as needed if you have any vegetation in your swales. So now I'm going to turn and talk about some residential design issues. And hopefully these will give you some ideas and some guidance if you have these types of issues in your community or if your residents have these issues. So some of these issues can be things like too much water by your door, standing water, in the landscape, soggy areas, and misdirected downspouts that Tina showed those pictures of. So water directed over the driveway or over the walkway. So in this image, this was an interesting solution, an interesting idea that these people had, that they took their downspout and decided to put it right over their driveway. This is a brand new construction home. This one here can cause, several problems. First of all, it's pretty unsightly. It'll just get darker. You'll have to clean it a lot, but it'll get darker and it can get slippery, so that can be a hazard. More common, we see the downspouts going down the driveway, and that's a problem, because the water from the roof of the house contains pollutants and contaminants, and then those are directed to the curb and gutters, and that go down into our storm drains with no treatment. So this one, once it goes across the sidewalk, it'll end up getting treated, through this. It'll end up, going through this plant material into the lawn and hopefully soak in. So this one is more about just functionality. That one just doesn't seem to function very well. So the option is, the better option is really to turn these downspouts and point them towards a landscape bed. So this would be a pretty easy solution if you take this downspout and just turn it this way, and let these plants in this landscape bed absorb that water. And so now I'm going to go through some different ideas on several different methods of treating, or first of all, dealing with this water and hopefully treating with it. So downspout extenders, these are a simple and easy way for anyone to take care of this water by themselves. You can buy the extender hose at your local box store, and you can attach it to your downspout. There's flexible ones, and they can be directed wherever you want them. And another option is to have one that has little holes in it, and those holes help to diffuse the water rather than it all coming out right there at the end. It spreads it out. So that's nice. This one also rolls up once it's done, when it's not in use anymore. And the other thing to keep in mind with downspout extenders is that you want to extend them at least two feet from the foundation of the house. You don't want to be undermining your foundation. So you want to just extend them out a little ways. So dry wells are good when you don't have much space. They're also pretty easy for a do-it-yourself project. What you do is you dig a hole about 2 times the size of your well, and about 6 inches deeper. So then you line the hole with this landscape fabric, because you don't want the soil clogging up the stones around the dry well. You add 6 inches of rock to the bottom of it. You place your well in that hole, and then you fill in around it with the rocks. You want to make sure it's level. You put on the lid, and then you fill it back up with rocks again. And then you make sure that your water is directed to that dry well. And I think, like, this one here, I think is really attractive. I think this one's really nice. So they're good for small spaces, as you can see. And what they do is, when they're in that dry well, what happens is the water fills up in there and it slowly percolates out. That's how that works. If you have a little more water than the dry well can handle, you can do a pipe drain with a pop out. So you start with your dry well, and you add a pipe to it. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're about 10 feet away from the house. You want to make sure that the pop out is at a lower elevation. So you want to a lower elevation than the house and the well, so that the water functions. It just lets gravity do the work. But what happens is the dry well fills up. It travels along this pipe, and then when this fills up, the water just kind of pops out. There's no electricity or nothing like that. It's just all gravity kind of making it work. And this one, you want to make sure that the discharge point is at least 10 feet from the house. Another option you can use is rain gardens, and these are great for low spots in the yard that tend to hold water. And these low spots are typically hard to maintain, either getting your mower through there, or maybe the grass just won't thrive there. So it's an alternative for these low spots. They treat, filter, and allow water to infiltrate into the ground slowly, which helps remove the pollutants from the stormwater runoff. They should include plants that can tolerate short-term flooding as well as periods of drought. Some I use Central Florida plants for this example, but some plants that you could use would be, say, canna lilies, swamp sunflower, some ferns might work, aster, Fakahatchee grass, iris, swamp hibiscus. Those are all good options. We also have EDIS documents on this that we can send to you all or put in the chat box of plants that would work well in a rain garden. We also have EDIS documents on how to build and design a rain garden. And as you can see, they can be real pretty. They can be very attractive areas. So they're a nice option. Sorry, my it's been doing this to me lately. It clicks fast. So permeable pavers are also a great solution. They're used more in high traffic areas. They allow for infiltration between the gaps of the pavement. And depending on what type of paver you choose, you can fill it with stones or plant materials such as grasses. The pavers need to be set on a bed of graded base material, and that allows the water someplace to go. Rather, it allows it to infiltrate and be able to be saved kind of in these spaces in between these rocks. So, it has someplace to go, and that's the reason for the sub base. We have this little key down here. Permeable pavers are a little more expensive, and you would probably want, a professional to install those with all this sub base here. So there's also permeable concrete and asphalt. And these are great for very high traffic areas such as parking lots and driveways and walking trails. I've got a short video, it's super short, that I'll show you this permeable asphalt in action. It's pretty exciting to see it work. It's kind of, to me, it kind of looks like, little magic happening here.
Pleasure to be here today.
So you can see on that, it's just, they're pouring all that water, and I couldn't clip the video to, that we could stay on there, but they're pouring all that water on the asphalt, and it's just disappearing, and that's pretty amazing. So that's a great option if if you have a new place where you're going to be installing some pavement and really need it to be permeable. That would be a great option. So next, I'm going to talk about the swale between houses, and this is a really tough area, to deal with, and you may have this in your community. It's really common, especially in newer communities where we're really increasing the density. So and as I showed you earlier, that the water usually goes right down there in between the houses. So this shows some of the issues. What happens is you get a lot of water because you're getting it from both of the roofs of the house. So you have a high volume of water in this area. It also tends to be quite shady because, you've got both of the houses, blocking the sun at one time or another. So they can be very complicated areas. This one you can see, this lawn, this house is quite a bit higher than this house. So what was happening with this one is all the water from this roof was going and ending up in this area here. And these people just decided to pave it all. I believe in this community too, their front door is right there. So there was kind of a need to have a safe walkway to the front door. But there are some other options too that might help. And in narrow areas in less than 5 feet, there's a couple things you could do, and you might be able to just turn off one whole side of heads. So meaning that one house is irrigating the whole area. The other thing you can do is you could possibly just remove every alternating heads. So you would remove this head, and then you'd remove that head, and then that head and that head, and you'd keep the corner ones. So you're alternating it. And that would be is if the homeowners were paying, the water bill themselves, you wouldn't want just one homeowner in charge of paying the whole water bill. So it would be a better solution to alternate the heads. Something else you could consider is a ground cover that can tolerate, some moisture and, shadier conditions. So like this is jasmine, Asiatic jasmine, something like that might work if there was enough sun. There's some other, shade ground covers that might be an option. Also, possibly incorporating some hardscape elements like this picture at the top would be another option. It's a difficult area. And if you guys want to put into the chat box, I can't see it right now, but if you want to put in the chat box, some of the issues that you're having in your community, maybe we can start to address those in our panel discussion in a little bit here. So now I'm going to talk about stormwater ponds. And
I just wanted to mention, if it's a question, just put it in the question and answer. If it's just
that way we won't miss it.
Yes, indeed. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So I'm going to give a little background here. So since 1982, Florida statutes have required that the rainfall landing on newly constructed impervious surfaces such as rooftops, streets, parking lots, etc., must be treated before turning runoff that leaves the property ends up in the local water bodies. The pollutants in stormwater runoff, heavy metals, fertilizers, pesticides, trash, bacteria, and sediment are the biggest source of water quality problems in the state, more so even than industrial and agricultural sources. New developments are required to treat that runoff. This may be accomplished by several means, but the most common methods are still large stormwater ponds, like we talked about in the beginning of this presentation. So stormwater ponds are defined as either retention or detention ponds. Dry ponds typically allow water to infiltrate into the soil like this. And in contrast, detention ponds capture the stormwater runoff and store it before slowly releasing the water downstream. Something to keep in mind too is in these temporary retention ponds, they can often serve as multi-use areas. So when there hasn't been a lot of rain, or when it's not wet, they can be used to have your kids run around or throw the frisbee or walk your dog or things like that. They can be used for other things, which is a great benefit. So, why do we have stormwater ponds? I just kind of went over that. But the function of ponds is to prevent flooding and to treat stormwater runoff by allowing particulates to settle at the bottom of the pond rather than running off site. And this is just a graphic of, what I've been talking about, another graphic. So, but there's an issue here that hopefully y'all don't have to deal with, but you might. Residents want green lawns and blue lakes, but often these two things can compete with each other. The more landscape is fertilized and irrigated, the more nutrients end up in the pond, creating poor water quality. So how can we balance these two things, the aesthetics with a good water quality? And that's kind of the big $1 million question. But we'll look at each one of these things in the next couple of slides. So first of all, everyone wants a green lawn and everyone wants to live on a lake. As you can see on the image, there are 21 homes around each one of these lakes, and they impact these lakes. Remember, the community design is designed to drain towards these lakes. That's their function, is to capture the stormwater. So everything that is that is not used by the landscape, everything that is put on these landscapes that is not absorbed by the turf grass or the plants ends up in these ponds. And that's why they tend to have a lot of nutrients in them. So next, everyone wants the blue water in their lakes, like these pictures. This is beautiful, right? But the problem is most Floridians don't live on a lake. They live on a stormwater pond. Now, this is a beautiful stormwater pond. I'd be really happy to live on this pond. And I'm sure there's a lot of wildlife that are attracted to this pond, and there's a lot of benefits to it. So, they can look great and they can be a real amenity to the community. but that's not typically how they're sold. You know, they're sold as lakes rather than a functioning stormwater system. And you know, we can help by educating residents and letting them know that, you know, the purpose of these ponds, and that we need to, you know, we need to maintain them and protect them. So I don't think anybody wants to live on this one over here, the stormwater pond. We know inputs are contributing to poor water quality and algal growth. And so I'm going to talk about some things that we can do to prevent this from happening. But first, that, you know, this is a graphic from FDEP on the eutrophic cycle, and, you know, the excess nutrients causes excessive weed growth and algal growth, which reduces water clarity and quality, ends up to fish kills and smelly ponds. And then, of course, loss of recreation, because you wouldn't want to be fishing or you know, you wouldn't want to be on that pond at all. You probably shouldn't fish in a stormwater pond anyway. So some things we can do is use stormwater BMPs, or best management practices. And I'm going to talk about a few of those in these next couple of slides that I have. Many homeowners do not connect their landscape design and maintenance practices with the problems in their stormwater ponds. Highly maintained lawns and direct discharge of stormwater into ponds cause much of the weedy growth in them. One of the most important steps to have a more attractive stormwater pond is to form a partnership with the people in your community, and then learn as much as possible about your particular pond. And that's where, you know, this education component comes in. If you engage the community, you know, they become stakeholders, and they become interested in protecting, you know, their pond and doing what they can. If you use a company for pond maintenance, make sure to include them in this planning process so everyone's on the same page. So one thing you can do is reduce your fertilizer input, and that helps build your pond's natural defenses. So some fertilizer BMPs are never fertilized before a heavy rain, never fertilized within 10 feet of any water body. As Tina mentioned earlier, don't use weed and feed products. Use a broadcast spreader with a deflector shield, and that will deflect the you know, fertilizer, so it's not going towards the pond. You only want to apply fertilizer when the grass is actively growing, and you always want to read and follow the fertilizer label. So source control, the reduction of fertilizer and pesticides will always be the best defense, but pond edge plantings can play a role as well. So installing a 10 to 20 foot buffer zone between the landscape and shoreline can help. It helps with absorbing nutrients before they enter the pond, providing habitat for wildlife, preventing erosion, and enhancing the beauty of the pond. You may want to protect the view, though, with low ground covers and breaks in tall vegetation, because homeowners will still want to be able to see the pond and enjoy it. Another thing to keep in mind is buffer and fertilizer requirements are variable per county specific ordinances, as we mentioned earlier. So be sure to check with your local county extension office, and they can help you, you know, determine what the fertilizer rules are if you are unsure. So next is adding aquatic plants can help. So just, you know, just the slide before, we were talking about a buffer zone. It could be a low mow turf strip, but anyway, so that would be this area right here or here. Now we're talking about adding aquatic plants to the littoral zone. You want to try to aim for about 1/3 of the pond to be maintained with shallow littoral shelf aquatic plants. And they can really help uptake nutrients and help stabilize the shelf and help reduce erosion. And the next slide I'm going to show you illustrates that. So what I'd like you to do here is to look at this image, and you can see where there's this plant material here, and you can see where the edge of the shoreline really extends out, and there's a less steep erosion happening at this end, where here and where there's no plants, you can really see where the pond is starting to erode, and you know, and the shoreline is much, you know, thinner. So some plants are a great, you know, way to help stabilize that bank of the pond. Next is aeration can help with your pond. It's another BMP. Water exposed to the air typically has a higher dissolved oxygen concentration, and this allows for aquatic organisms to breathe and aids in the nutrient removal process just by, aerating that water and, adding DO to it. So one thing to keep in mind is fountains like this one. Certainly they're very, they're beautiful, they're aesthetic. They can be used in ponds less than 8 feet, or they're functional in ponds less than 8 feet. They can be, I suppose they can be used in any pond, but they might not be an effective aeration device for ponds over 8 feet. For ponds over 8 feet, what you can use though are these bottom diffusers or bubblers, and it's simply little tubes that they push air up from the bottom of the pond and help incorporate air throughout the pond. So those are two great ways to add aeration to your pond. So maintenance, some practical maintenance guidelines for stormwater ponds are removing debris, especially at the inflow and outflow of ponds, and give special attention to, drains and drop boxes. This will reduce the amount of pollutants that the pond will have to remove. You can see in this image here, this was after a pretty heavy storm event. And, this mulch is just, it's all on top of the storm drain. So that's it's gonna clog up the storm drain. It's gonna put a lot of nutrients down there. And then also these plants are just covered with this, debris and mulch material. So you want to make sure you get in there and, scrape that off the top and help these plants up and, stand them up and get them back. Otherwise you're going to lose them, and they'll die, and so they won't function. You want to inspect the entire stormwater system on an annual or semi-annual basis, and make brief inspection trips after each storm like this, because if you left this here for half a year, these plants, like I said, would just probably not be surviving that. Cleaning up the debris is an important part of the inspection. Leaves, limbs, other debris should be removed from the conveyance system. Make sure the discharge of your mower is not directed towards the pond. This will help keep grass cuttings out of the pond, as will the buffer or no-mow zone that we talked about just a couple of slides ago. So that helps to, just also helps to keep things out of the pond, and stormwater ponds need to be cleaned out periodically, and that's like really dredging. And what our research shows is it's about every 25 years. And you need to do this to keep them functioning properly. You want to consult a professional for information on the methods that can be used and the proper disposal of the dredge materials. An efficient functioning stormwater system takes as much time and effort as maintaining the rest of your landscape. So it's really something that, is always, I know it's an expensive, it's a high expense, but it really behooves you to take care of it and keep it functioning as efficiently as possible with regular maintenance. And then this is my last slide. We want to know who's responsible for maintaining the pond. And typically it's the HOA or CDD or the property association. But in some cases, it can also be the county or municipality. So, these are the things, that you need to know. You need to, do the upkeep and maintenance, and, who pays for the labor and maintenance and the permitting of this. And I think at this point, I can stop sharing my slide. I think Tina has a story that she's going to share with her experience on this matter.
Yeah, so it is critical that you do a little investigation as to who is responsible for the conservation easement or area in question, the stormwater pond in question, because you can actually incur fines. And we had that happen here in Seminole County. A homeowners association was following the guidance of a paid professional, and they were recommending that the stormwater area was able to be, enhanced and manipulated, that the vegetation could have been removed and things like that. So they did start to remove that area. However, it was actually the property of the county. And, with the county not being approached and involved and incorporated, they actually got some fines. And so the area, the board of directors for the HOA, was kind of misguided and did have obviously those fees to incur and, had to work with the county to move forward. So it's really important that for our stormwater ponds, for our conservation areas, before any work is done, that you consult with not only a professional, but your local municipality, just to ensure that any of the work that's going to be done is allowable. And some of those easements are held by the water management districts. So it really is kind of a hodgepodge of who owns the land. If you're in Seminole County, feel free to reach out if you have a question like that. We're always happy to try to get to the bottom of that question to help you out. If you're in another county, I'm also going to share how to contact your local extension office. So I'm going to put it in the chat right now, that if you have, type this here, if you have a local extension office and, consult with them, and they can put you in touch with the county if it's public works or whoever's maintaining it, so that you can be sure that you're not going to incur fines or anything like that. So that link is now in the chat for you. Great. And are you all done with your slides, Claire?
I am all done. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and turn to some questions that we had that came in during your talk. And thank you all so much for your active participation. It makes us as educators just over the moon to be able to interact with you. So if you have questions, again, question and answer section is the perfect place for those so we don't miss them. If you want to put in the chat, we did have a few people sharing their stories about irrigation, stormwater ponds, turf. If you have a frustrating story, a success story, a story in progress, feel free to drop it in the chat. We find those just very interesting. And we might be able to incorporate them into our panel discussion. Okay, great. So we have just a basic question here. Will we have the slides and emails available? So after this webinar, we are going to be sending you a survey, and that survey really helps us to make sure that we're always improving this event. The Florida Friendly State Office has graciously held this event many, many times in person and virtually. And that survey is going to help us to constantly improve and make sure that we're meeting those needs that you have. So definitely look out for the survey. It's going to come from a program called Qualtrics. We're also going to be sending you those links that we talked about. And I'm happy to share a PDF of my slides. I don't know, Claire, if, and Dr. Esen Momol, if you'd like to also do that, we can send those out. And then we will have the recording be made available later once it loads and everything. So we are recording this and we can make that available to you. So be sure to watch out for those emails from us so that you can get that great information, but also help us out with the survey to be able to improve our class. Okay, was the fountain or bottom diffusers based on depth of the pond or the surface area of the pond?
On the depth, and I will send out the publication that's on that. It can describe in detail how they came about these conclusions much better than I can.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Claire. And just thank you for your presentation. That's just so eye-opening to all of us to better understand not only what the difference is between a real lake and a stormwater pond, but also, how does this happen? How do we get to a green soup, and how can we prevent it and fix it? You've provided a lot of great solutions. I'm just seeing a comment here that somebody's going to provide these resources to the Environmental Fish and Lakes Committee. And I think that's a great idea. Please do share these in your HOA. Share the materials, the handouts, the links with those in your HOA and your board and your neighborhood. And if you need additional information for newsletters or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out.
We'll also come and talk to HOAs. If you need a presentation, if you're trying to convert to more Florida friendly, or you want to show them some of the success stories that Esen talked about we can come to your community also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Send
know
us
that sometimes.
invitations. We look forward to receiving your invitations.
Absolutely. Talk with your board and look at a time that's good for one of us to come out and, talk further about these specific issues. I know it can be really contentious when there's hiring and money involved and things like that. We're always happy to be an unbiased voice and give a presentation. So here's another one, Claire. Do you have strategies for increasing Florida-friendly landscaping knowledge of COA or HOA decision makers and board members?
Sorry, I was trying to find that as you were reading it. Do you have strategies? Yeah, well, just what we said, like we would love to come and speak to your board. And, sometimes it's helpful to have that third party. Esen has played that role a lot, where just having someone else come and talk about this, from, IFAS, sometimes it can diffuse tensions that may arise.
That's right. And I just want to also mention that don't sign off. We have our panelists, including an attorney, a community association manager, somebody on the landscaping committee for their HOA, and others. So please don't sign off. We're just wrapping up this last section, and we will get to our panelists very soon. So yeah. Let's see what else we have here. Regarding bulkheaded canals, is it still 10 feet or less?
And I think what they mean is if fertilizer applied. And, that's a little variable per county as well. Like some places it can go from 3 feet for a professional applying, and there's different rules, I think, for professionals. And yeah, Tina, I should let you talk about this, but I know it is different across the state.
So for our county, it's all water bodies, storm drains, lakes, rivers, stormwater ponds, anything like that is 15 feet. So there's no real exemptions for that 15 feet. Doesn't matter if you're a professional or a resident. So it just depends, check with that Florida Friendly app to get the most up-to-date information for your area, because maybe there are, things that they've incorporated for canals or professionals or something.
Hey, Tina, you think we could go to the panel?
I think that's a great idea. So
I'll keep an eye on these, and I'll, if there's a lull, I'll definitely.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great time to introduce our panelists and, get that started. So if we want to, you can go ahead and activate your cameras. And I'll give Emily a second to kind of allow all the panelists to come on. Okay.
I see everybody.
You do? Okay, I'm just seeing Claire, so that's probably
Okay,
why.
yeah, I put mine in gallery view.
Okay, great. So if we're seeing everybody, that's perfect. We'll go ahead and start our introduction. So you're obviously familiar with myself, Florida Friendly Landscaping in Seminole County. We have obviously Claire Lewis, who's at the state office for Florida Friendly Landscaping. We also are joined by, of course, Dr. Esen Momol, who is the head of the director of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. And as we're transitioning into our panel, we also are joined by Antonio Shaw, who is a community association manager with Rosetta and Company. And so he's a professional community association manager, and he manages communities throughout Central Florida. We also have Patrick Burton, who is, navigate to my screen here, who is an attorney and a managing attorney for the Community Association Department with the law office of John L. DeMasi. They are based out of Orlando, Florida. So we have somebody to answer all of your litigious and legal questions. We also have Jim Helmers. Jim is here in Seminole County. He served on the landscaping committee for the Sweetwater Oaks Homeowners Association. And last but not least, Lisa Roberts, who is the current director of the Florida Wildflower Foundation. And she also serves on her Homeowners Association Board of Directors. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Antonio Shaw to start the conversation. We also do have quite a few questions, so feel free to, we can turn it back over to doing some of those questions as well. And right now, Antonio, Lisa, and Claire are muted.
Hi, Tina, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. A wonderful presentation this morning. Really enjoyed everything and saw some very good questions come through the panel, through the chat. One thing that I wanted to encourage everyone to do, this is very helpful for you in regards to living in a community association, understanding plants, your storm systems. I strongly encourage you to defer to the professionals in your communities, the landscapers, the pond maintenance crew. It's counterproductive to challenge them with information that you learned today. So let's try to work together with them to find the best solution, because sometimes you will tell them something that they're not aware of, or there may be a reason behind them doing something that you don't necessarily agree with, or that contradicts what's going on today. So I want to encourage everyone to have a good approach to how you approach the professionals, or your managers, or your board about something that you may have learned today. So they're volunteers. Let's try to encourage them to continue volunteering and trying to help the community. One thing I did want to do is go ahead and get started with some of the questions that came through for the panel that you wanted to defer to later. Let's see. I thought some good ones came for the attorney. I think, Patrick, this would be a good one for you. Can HOAs go against the FFL principles? Are there any statutes that need to, are there any statutes they need to adhere to regarding landscaping procedures? If you don't know what FFL is, Tina, can you clarify that? Or Florida Friendly Landscaping, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, Antonio. So the statute that we're referring to does not give a ton of guidance to HOAs as far as what is actually constitutes Florida friendly landscaping. That's something that is different for every community and potentially different for individual properties as well. The issue of whether the association can go against it, not really. So if we're talking about a homeowner making changes to their property, what the statute says is that the association cannot prevent someone from instituting Florida-friendly landscaping on their property. What constitutes Florida-friendly landscaping could be a variety of different things, but regardless of whatever your restrictions are in your community, if your restrictions would have the effect of preventing someone from installing Florida-friendly landscaping on their property, they're unenforceable.
So let me ask you this, and I want to kind of expand on that question from the audience. If an owner just essentially stops taking care of their yard, sprays weed, just kills the entire grass, and the manager sends them a violation and they say, well, I'm going Florida friendly, how can the association or the board go back after that person and say, well, technically you're not Florida friendly, here's what you would have to do in order to be in compliance for that?
So if we're talking about, so there's two different components to this really. There's the lack of maintenance approach of what you're talking about there. And then there's the also submitting an application to make changes to your property. So if what we're talking about is just a pure lack of maintenance of a property that was not Florida friendly to begin with, I would think the association would still have the authority to enforce their restrictions on that point as to a maintenance issue. What we're talking about more is someone modifying their property in a way that is now going to be Florida friendly, as far as xeriscaping, installing drought resistant grass, in using landscaping that is specific to that area, natural to that area. we've actually had this a litigation on this matter before, where a homeowner essentially just let their property just go wild. Just stopped mowing it, stopped watering it, stopped doing any care at all. Weeds took over the entire property, and they tried to make that argument. We eventually settled the issue, but we had to retain an expert to tell us that no, the property as it existed was not Florida friendly in the traditional sense of the word. It was there, what was always there. They just stopped maintaining it. So I think that you can still enforce in those conditions.
Good. I see another question in here. An old HOA dissolved. Who takes care of those ponds? I've had to maintain the overflow at a house I used to own. I've seen green hazards.
So we're saying the association doesn't exist anymore?
I think that's what they're trying to say. Brenda Daly, are you still on?
I would go with that because the participants are automatically muted. So unless she chats back to us,
Yeah, I'm guessing, Patrick, that it just dissolved and now nobody's responsible for maintenance, essentially. Or the
Yes.
association is
that
no
can
longer.
happen.
Yeah, well, if there is no association anymore in the legal sense of the word, it's been dissolved, and there is no corporate entity anymore, well, then you can contact the municipality that the association is located in and have a conversation with them about it to see what they would be willing to do. The other option would be to try to reform the association and try to convince the homeowners that live there that the municipality is not going to maintain this area up to our standards. And if we want this to be fixed, we need to do it ourselves. And you probably still have a declaration of covenants that's still recorded on the properties. It's just a legal mechanism to actually start the association as an entity again.
And I believe contacting the stormwater management district too, or the water management district that you live in, because they're responsible for the permitting and things of the ponds. That would be another resource. I think everything Patrick said is exactly correct, but that would just be one additional contact.
Okay.
Yeah, and even I know here in Seminole, we're well connected with our public works, who has a GIS layer of the ponds and things like that. So we can always help navigate people to that. And even sometimes the property appraiser will have information as well in their system. If they have some kind of mapping system might be available.
Now, I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Patrick, or for Claire, Tina, or Esen. I'm a homeowner working to convert my yard to a Florida-friendly, most native landscape. However, I am getting pushback from my HOA. They added a percentage of turf grass requirement. Why is St. Augustine considered Florida-friendly if it requires a lot of inputs? I'm sorry. I'm struggling to keep it alive during the drought in my front yard. I apologize, but the way it was written.
Dr. Momol, do you want to take that one?
Is she located in that homeowner is located in Gainesville, in Alachua County, or what county is she in?
It doesn't say, and it's an anonymous attendee, so we don't know.
Okay, because there's a different story if she lives in Alachua County. Alachua County is different than any other counties in the state of Florida. They recently passed the FFL code and regulation that they can help homeowners if they are going to install the FFL landscape, and San Agustin, especially as a turf grass, doesn't survive under the tree. If the homeowner says this is Florida friendly and HOA says it's not Florida friendly, then they can just contact to Alachua County Department of Environmental Protection with UF-IFAS extensions help. They can make HOA to accept whatever the homeowner is willing to do. So there's kind of enforcement of FFL implications in Alachua County, which is different than in other counties. That's why I asked, where does she live?
And in general, when we see this question in other counties, we are not we're strictly education. That's our role. So we offer to come and talk to your board and try to, show them some of the benefits of Florida friendly. St. Augustine can, survive without inputs in some areas. I've seen it look really good in some areas, but when it's not the right plant for the right place, that's when
Exactly.
you are really having to irrigate and fertilize and things like that. So that would also kind of be, working with the local extension and having someone evaluate, the soil types and the conditions for that particular, location, if St. Augustine's the right plant for the right
So
place.
I have a good question. As I have utilized you throughout the years, a common question is, what is the turnaround time? Should they bring a sample, a soil sample, grass sample, anything to the extension office? What would be the turnaround time for an answer?
Yeah, so I could take that one. I mean, I think that it depends on, obviously we were in COVID last year, so we were encouraging only photos to our master gardener clinic. For homeowners, they can bring soil samples. If you're a professional or if you're doing an HOA project for one of those communal spaces, or if you're a community manager, we really recommend, like I put in the chat, that soil test through the UF-IFAS Extension Lab in Gainesville. The form walks you through all of that so that you could send the sample up there. That's just going to give you a much more robust understanding of your soil, as opposed to what we can address here at our office. We only do pH. And so those soil samples that come into our office, yes, it is local, and it's maybe easier for some people. And for some circumstances, it would work perfectly fine. However, if again, you're considering installation of a larger project, you definitely want to go with the larger full test up at UF. Now, both of those are going to turn around in about a week. So our master gardeners, as long as we have our volunteers helping us, we usually turn around those soil samples in our office and within a week. And same thing for the UF-IFAS lab for soil testing up in Gainesville. It's usually about a week, maximum 2 weeks. You'll get that report emailed to you. And we're always happy to have our master gardeners, if you're a resident, or me as an agent, if you're a professional, to go over those soil reports with you. For plant identification, really the best way is to, take some really high quality pictures and email them to our master gardener clinic. Again, if you're a professional, I recommend that you work directly with me as an agent, or we have our residential horticulture agent, or Claire at the state office, to be able to help you with identifying those. And that is about, we do have our turf diagnostic as well. So if you have turf grass that has issues going on, you can drop those off to our clinic here in Seminole County, or other extension offices do also have that turf grass diagnostic, or Gainesville also has the turf grass clinic. So definitely utilize these resources. Antonio has been amazing over the years, coming to us, just sending images, emails, and just saying, hey, what's going on here? What is this? What's with this tree? What's with this issue? What's with this turf grass? And we can ask more questions to get to the root of that problem, but we are here to definitely help in that way. And then I also want to, incorporate maybe some questions that we can highlight some of the success stories that Jim Helmers has had, and Lisa Roberts as well, and perspectives as they've been navigating changes in their communities. So, as you, Jim, and Lisa have tried to integrate Florida Friendly into your communities, what are some of the maybe struggles or successes that you have incurred?
I think one of the things that we've encountered is just, as someone stated, just letting your turf go. That seems to be the biggest problem for us, is people who turn off their irrigation and let the turf go. Our covenants specify sod. They don't specify, and it's a certain percentage. So that gets a little bit dicey. But, you know, on the other hand, it's allowed me to transition most of my front yard to Florida natives and Florida friendly.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes, Tina, you asked about struggles, and we did have struggles. We still do have struggles with our HOA. I'm all in for the Florida friendly principles and native plants. As one of the panelists, one of the participants asked to have a Florida Native Plant Society member or panelist on this panel, but I've been involved with native plant for years and propagate, and I'm all in with native plants. I'm sure Lisa too with the Florida Wildflower Foundation is the same. But obviously money is a tight issue with most HOAs. And we were trying to get a landscape architect to do a coordinated plan along a road through the main part of our development, the main road. And I can understand that didn't go through for now because of money, which we're attempting to raise fees. But I was really frustrated with things that were actually free that were part of the Florida friendly landscaping principles, such as reducing fertilization, reducing broadcast pesticide application, and reducing watering. All those actually, not only are they free, but they can save money in the long run, and also converting plants to the right plant in the right place. So all these principles weren't going to cost money, they're going to save money. So our success was to eliminate one fertilization, which was in December. We were fertilizing every even month of the year, and we eliminated December's fertilization, which was a small first step. I was not so far able to eliminate the broadcast pesticide use and the watering, which is excessive. But it's education and time. I tried to stress, that we have the algae growth on the coast, that closed down a big part of our economy in the southwest part of Florida, and also the manatee deaths because of the fertilizer and the algae growth, and probably septic systems too, with more people staying home in the last year. But there's a lot of frustrations. I can understand when money is an issue, but when it's saving money, it was just hard convincing. As Tina gave a presentation actually to the board. As Tina said, the Florida friendly principles do not mean you're sacrificing beauty or the look of anything, including the turf or the plants. It just means you're managing things more efficiently and more effectively. So all this is getting back to the 9 principle Florida friendly landscaping. But it's a slow process, and it's education is the biggest thing. And Florida's not the United Kingdom, and turf grass is not really that good of an idea in Florida.
And I think too, like Antonio said at the top, it's really important that we work together. And here at UF-IFAS, we're here to help you facilitate those conversations and bring to the forefront what is the science and what is the research. And because we all have a lot of different perspectives in Florida, we might be moving from different places. We might be working with professionals that did more of their work in another part of the state. Now they've relocated or something. You just never know who's going to be at the table. But really what we want to convey in this workshop is that we all want to work together. And that's really what the law forces us to do, because the homeowner has the right to do Florida friendly, but the HOA also has the right, like Esen said, if it's in their codes, to be able to have these other restrictions. And so we all want to use the different pieces and parts to make that puzzle. So Antonio, if you want to pick up on some other questions, or if
Sure.
had a comment
I have one here. We use the rubber.
Sorry.
We use the rubber ducky video in our FYN presentations, but this seems a little different, more up to date. Where did you access this?
That is from the Think Blue campaign based out of Maine. It is open sourced, so you're allowed to use it. I can include that link in our follow-up email, but it's the Think Blue Ducky campaign.
Gotcha.
And if you don't mind, since I've got the highlight right now, I just wanted to follow up on Jim's. I understand that you're frustrated and that you didn't get everything you wanted that first time, but removing that December fertilization is huge. I mean, that's when we say absolutely don't apply fertilizer. The turf is dormant. Like that's an easy one, right? But you did it, and that is when the turf doesn't uptake it, then that's when it turns into non-point pollution and ends up in our stormwater. So I mean, it was a good one.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that, sometimes when we're dealing with HOAs, we can have people who want to do a full FFL remodel, and then we have others that really want the conventional. And so if we can just meet in the middle to vote on specific and small changes, I think that is really the way to go.
Can I just add that, Jim, we were going through the same thing in our HOA just recently because our landscape had become unkempt. The contractor wasn't doing a good job, and we changed, and now we have a contractor who's recommending fertilization, every quarter, and pesticides. And by just chatting back and forth and educating the board, we were able to eliminate all fertilization except for spring, and we eliminated the pesticide and decided that if there is no problem with our common areas, there's no pesticide needed. So it would be an application that would be as needed.
Right.
That's fantastic. And one thing I just want everybody here in attendance to know today is that we have a model landscape maintenance contract available online. And the idea is that you would download this and you just edit it so it works for your community, but it has all the best management practices incorporated into that management contract. We had it reviewed by the attorneys here at UF, and it's a great tool to use and modify so it works for your community. And it incorporates things like that, like don't fertilize or add pesticides unless you're having a problem. Like this blanket application is not a UF recommendation. So it's incorporated in there, do soil tests before you apply fertilizer, things like that.
Gotcha. All right, so we have a question. Is cutting back muley grasses recommended? Spartina, ? Faca, ?
I can take that one. Or Lisa, if you had anything to chime in. So maybe once a year, give it a haircut. So they're asking about the muley grass, Spartina, which is like a rush, and then Fakahatchee grass. They're going to be our bunching grasses that are really Florida friendly, very sustainable. Plant it once, basically let it do its thing. I would, if you're cleaning up the landscape in the springtime, feel free to cut it all the way back, to maybe 6 inches to a foot. And, then it'll regrow. But it's not necessary every time that the landscape is pruned or cleaned or anything like that by any means. We want these grasses to look beautiful, bunching and flowering. So we don't want them to be chopped into little hedgehogs all year long. We want them to be the right plant in the right place. At max, they usually get maybe 5 feet or so, depending on the species of that native bunching grass.
We take a little bit of a different tack. We recommend that unless there is, a lot of dead leaves, a lot of, filling in with leaves or matter that needs to be cleaned out, that you give it a very gentle haircut, maybe 6 to 10 inches by gathering up the grass on the top and just cutting it, and remove the dead thatch, if you would, around the plant. And that's because it's important habitat to insects and even to some of our moths. So we prefer, if you can live with it, and it doesn't look bad, just to, give it a gentle gussying up.
Yeah, yeah, and really no more than once a year. It's, you
Right.
know, meant to, go through its natural cycle.
Yeah, we may do it at my home every 1 to 3 years, maybe, really just to mimic fire. I do it in the spring when we naturally would have fires like April to June. I just did one muley grass. I don't do them all at once either. I just do to revive and mimic our natural fire regime in Florida.
Great point. I actually wanted to, Antonio, can we turn to the rain barrel question and
Yeah, I was
maybe
going to that one next.
loop Patrick in to see what he thinks?
So we have our rain barrels, part of the FFL plan and proper setup.
Sure. So let me first start off by saying that there has, to my knowledge anyway, been no district court of appeal cases on Florida-friendly landscaping issues that take them head on. So to give specific advice as to whether something is or isn't legally allowed, it's all of this stuff is a little bit of a question mark because judges just haven't weighed in on it yet. Cases haven't gone that far. I can say that if somebody is using rain barrels as a way to irrigate their property, it's incorporated within their Florida-friendly landscaping design, and if they were able to show that that is the case, then I would be hesitant for an association to enforce against it.
As we understand, yeah, they can't enforce against it, but like they can say that it has to be in the backyard or not in the front yard, that they can make regulations regarding it.
Sure, but those, and this is another issue that we need to talk about as well. And I think this is something that boards really need to understand, is that there's a big difference between restrictions that exist in your declaration of covenants and rules that the board has made on their own. So restrictive covenants, that's in the declaration itself. And these things are recorded in the public records. They encumber your lot, and they are extremely enforceable against individuals. Individual rules that a board has made or guidelines that a architecture review board has made about alterations to the property, those can sometimes carry as much weight as something that's in the declaration itself, but it all depends on what authority the board actually had to make those rules to begin with. So we've seen some instances where the declaration, for example, does not address something that specifically as rain barrels or something like that. However, the board promulgates these rules on their own. However, they're not included in the declaration itself. So you need to be very cautious about that rule that you made and how specific you're getting with it, and make sure you actually have the authority to do that under your declaration if you want it to be enforceable.
That's really good information. I haven't heard it explained so well before. That's really great to know.
Okay, next question. A deed restriction or covenant may not prohibit or be enforced so as to prohibit any property owner from implementing Florida-friendly landscaping on his or her land, or create any requirement or limitation in conflict with any provision of Part 2 of this chapter or a water shortage order. Other order, consumptive use permit, or rule adopted are issued pursuant to Part 2 of this chapter. A local government ordinance may not prohibit or be enforced so as to prohibit any property owner from implementing Florida-friendly landscaping on his or her land. What protection does this give?
Yeah, so it sounds like we're just quoting right from the statute here. So if we're talking by protection, I don't know if we're talking about protection for the individual homeowner or protection for the association. But the overall purpose of the statute is to give a shield to homeowners against their board of directors that are going to be enforcing their documents in some way that would either prevent them from implementing Florida-friendly landscaping, or to require them to take certain maintenance obligations on their property that are a violation of local watering ordinances or any other ordinance that would prevent the type of maintenance the association is wanting to do. So for example, if you've got a homeowner that they're watering up to the limits of what is permitted in their municipality, and their lawn is still browning, well, association, you can't force them to violate that ordinance. You've got to stop there, and if they're maintaining the property up to the standards that they can based on the ordinance that is in play in their jurisdiction.
Okay. Esen, this is a question for you. Can Esen further clarify what is the difference between FYN?
I was just typing.
Okay, go for it.
Should I type or should I just talk about it?
Probably announce it so everyone can hear.
Okay. You may remember that I had shown the structure of the program. FFL consists of 3 sub-programs: FYN, which educates homeowners, youth, and what else? Gardeners. And Florida-friendly communities educates builders, developers, community associations, property managers, and GIBMP educates and trains and certified green industry professionals. So our MGVs, Master Gardener Volunteers, are teaching FFL principles, but some of them teach to homeowners, which under FYN program, and some of them teach and train commercially fertilizer applicators, which is green industry professionals. So MGVs, Master Gardener Volunteers, are both teaching commercial and homeowner audiences, but they are teaching FFL principles, not FYN principles.
And a lot of people have confusion over that, and that's why Esen's slide is so important. And when we redid the website, we tried to move away from, our personal acronyms and just started talking about the audiences. And so it's FFL, and it encompasses everything.
Yeah, and so like I'm a Florida Friendly Landscaping agent, and I teach for professionals, so landscapers and landscape architects, community association managers, but also for residents. And so we kind of, have different programming for different people, even though sometimes it's similar, it's all based on those 9 principles.
All right,
And
Patrick, here's one for you. Is a percentage of turf grass requirement legally enforceable if a homeowner is working to reduce turf grass and replacing it with drought-resistant native plants?
So on its face, I think that those percentages are enforceable. But if someone comes to you with a properly and demonstratively Florida-friendly, landscape-friendly lawn, you're not going to be able to prevent them from doing it, even with those percentages in place. And I know that may be a little bit of a conservative answer on this, but that's the advice that we would give our clients. And I say that because the law is untested when it comes to these things and what a judge is actually how the judge is going to construe these statutes. There's not a lot of case law at all that addresses these items. So I prefer the association be conservative on it and not take the risk. Something that boards need to be aware of anytime you have a covenant enforcement dispute like this is that prevailing party fees come into play. So what that means is that the loser of the case has to pay the winner of the case's attorney's fees. So that means you need to pay for your attorney and the attorney on the other side. So basically the stakes are high in these disputes. So unless you're very confident in the fact that the lawn that is being presented is not Florida friendly, err towards allowing it rather than trying to restrict against it.
I think this will be another one for you as well. Can an HOA limit the number of plants in a Florida-friendly lawn?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, you can certainly still have your restrictions in place as to the number of plants, but chances are that's not actually in your declaration. That's a rule that the association has come up with. So it comes down to what authority did the board have to make that rule to begin with? Assuming you are on strong footing to make that rule, and assuming that it's properly described as to the number of plants and the locations, I think it probably would be enforceable. But then again, just be cautious. If the homeowner demonstrates an overall landscaping plan and they present it to you signed off by a horticulturist or some other experts in the field that this is Florida friendly, you may want to try to resolve that without litigation, and permit that landscaping plan to go through.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to hear that Patrick say that, from a legal perspective, because we always do encourage, working through it, working with the homeowner, from the homeowner's perspective, approach your HOA so that you can gain that approval prior to doing anything. And then from the HOA's perspective, working with the homeowner to allow them to move forward in the way that still provides that uniformity in your neighborhood.
Right. What we don't want to happen is we don't want homeowners to abuse the statute, obviously, and either implement something that is just clearly not Florida friendly. For example, I'm going to just dump cement all over my front yard, or I'm just going to stop doing any maintenance at all. Clearly abuses of the statute. Those things all day we're comfortable enforcing against. But if someone is making a sincere, genuine effort here, try to work with them. And the statute encourages this. So Chapter 720, there's something called pre-suit mediation, and that's what's required by a homeowners association board prior to a lawsuit being filed against a homeowner for a covenant enforcement dispute. So what that is that you send a certified demand letter to that homeowner, and there's a form in the statute and how it works. It outlines what the violation is, and it gives the homeowner 20 days to agree to participate in pre-suit mediation. And what that mediation is, it's just the board and the homeowner sitting down trying to work out a resolution to what's going on here. And in many cases, you're able to work out what the dispute is, as long as both parties are reasonable in trying to find a solution to it, obviously. But that's a good mechanism to try to resolve the dispute before you actually even get to litigation.
Thank you, sir. Does FFL provide recommendations for which types of mulch are best for landscapes and why? We have some mulch controversies in our community.
I can't really speak for FFL, maybe Tina will, but the best mulches are natural mulches. I think the best ones are that fall off of trees, mainly the pine needles. And oak leaves also make a good mulch, but pine needles are the best mulch that I've found. Of course, I have a lot of longleaf pine in my yard, but Tina can give the official answer.
Yeah, so kind of like Patrick said, there's no real details in the law. The law supports Florida Friendly 9 principles. And I can tell you that in the 9 principles, there is recycle yard waste. And a way to recycle yard waste is to utilize those leaves that you might typically bag and rake them into your landscape bed. If you don't like the aesthetics of the look of those oak leaves or whatever type of leaves that they are, put a bag of mulch on top of that, of course, opened and spread out. Utilize the wood mulch on top of the leaves so that, you're capturing those leaves, you're capturing the organic material, you're recycling yard waste, but you're still getting the aesthetics of that wood mulch. So when we think about purchasing mulches, like I mentioned before, we don't recommend rubber mulch. So that's not considered Florida friendly, and it doesn't provide the same services and attributes that wood mulch does, or leaf mulch, that is actually, from a living thing. So I would say don't go with rubber mulch, and, see if you can utilize those leaves more in your community. If you're looking at purchasing mulch, pine straw, which is pine needles, that is very sustainable and usually affordable to be using in the landscape. And we also have pine products, so it could be pine fines, pine bark. Those are all, fairly good options. And then, it's hurricane season here pretty soon. We might be trimming trees and limbing up some trees in preparation of hurricane season. as they mulch those on site, that is very good mulch. So especially if it's oak, as long as we're not talking invasive species like our Brazilian peppers and all those other ones that we want to get out of sight and not return, we can use those oak limbs as mulch in the landscape. So as they're ground up right on site, using that mulch in the landscape is a really good way to do that. And you can use it in your mulch paths and your landscape beds, various things like that. So we would call that recycled mulch, or maybe utility mulch, as they're clearing the utility lines in preparation of the hurricane season. And the biggest thing with that is just avoiding those invasive species.
Thank you. Someone wants to know, why don't you want to use the word xeriscape? Is it still in ordinances, or, excuse me, is it still in ordinances and a lot of people are familiar with it? Denver Water coined the name in 1981.
I'll take that one. I'll take a first shot at it anyway. Tina and Esen, you can jump in. So the best way I can explain it is that Florida isn't Zurich. Zurich is, basically, Denver and Arizona, where they don't get much rainfall. We get a lot of rain. That's why we have all these stormwater ponds. We are trying to direct that rain, that runoff someplace. So we go through periods of, heavy rain and drought. So, we're a very temperate climate. So xeriscape doesn't capture all of what Florida's climate kind of offers. So Zurich is very specific on, low water use. Well, we have both.
Yeah, that's a great start, Claire, for sure. I mean, I've been to Denver. Denver's great, but it's so different. Its altitude is different. Its moisture is different. The humidity, the rainfall. We are, like I said before, tropical down south and subtropical in the rest of our state. And it's very important that we, acknowledge that and embrace it and plant our yards with landscaping plants that are going to be compatible with that humidity and moisture. When we talked about rain barrels here, we encourage rain barrels. We give them away. We want people to use them and install them. In Denver, there's actually ordinances against capturing rainwater and stuff like that. So, they have a very different perspective when it comes to water and to rain, and that affects the way that we manage our landscape.
All right. What type of fish can be introduced to ponds to help manage them? And what is the process to get the fish? I think I can answer the second part of that, but if you want to answer the first one.
Well, I can't really answer the first one. I've heard them called mosquito fish. I think it's tilapia too, but I'm not quite sure.
Carp and tilapia are popular.
Okay.
Generally, you would go through your pond company. If you have a pond in the association, I'm assuming you have a vendor service in the pond. The board can request. Sometimes they get the fish donated for free because it actually helps the pond company do their job. Sometimes there's a small charge for the fish. It's generally not much, maybe $100 or $200, but it does help and it does serve a purpose. So I would encourage you to ask your board, to ask the vendor for a proposal to get the fish, and ask them, can they be donated? Because a lot of times it is something that's offered for free.
Yeah, we were
oh, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
We were given a presentation yesterday where it was Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, and they had a program to give away the fish that you applied for. So
very cool. And I know you mentioned mosquito fish. So mosquito fish are just teeny tiny little guppies, mollies, tiny fish, and they do eat mosquito larvae. So they're really good to make sure that you have them in your stormwater pond. And usually they're found commonly in the water body, so you probably will have them. And then what I think the question is more about is the grass carp. And, typically people would want these grass carp fish to eat vegetation. And so they're only going to be eating things like hydrilla or submerged aquatic vegetation or grass. And one important thing is to not overstock the pond. And so here is what Antonio was saying, is work with your professional. Proper permits are required for if it discharges to like a real lake, or if it is a real lake and things like that. You have to work with FWC to get proper permits. And additionally, you don't want to overstock the pond because then they can actually eat all of the vegetation, causing a whole nother issue. So working with your, lake management professional to be sure that that is done properly.
Yeah, so let's not dump the fish in here as a free offer to the association. I drive a car, not an SUV. Sorry. I drive a car, not an SUV. Some grasses and hedges are too high to see over at intersections. How do you get commercial landscapers to stop this high trimming? I'm deferring to you. I have no idea about that one.
That one's complicated, right? Like it goes back to education and, and are they willing to kind of listen? Certainly local, government can enforce, vision triangles and things like that. Do they have the staff or the money to do that? I don't know. Maybe the thing to do is to report it as a obstruction, a site obstruction to your code people.
Yeah, and I would assume that you can identify who the vendor is. Sometimes a simple call to the company can get it done, but it's a lot of different factors that go into that situation. If you're just talking about driving down the street, and you pretty much have to first identify who is servicing the area.
Honestly, I think it really comes down to right plant, right place. If they're planting a plant that is growing really high near an intersection or a roadway, that's probably a wrong plant for that area and should be reconsidered to be removed and replaced. If there are safety issues around plants, or even if you're a homeowner and you just really don't like the plant in your area, you can, or if there are site issues like pH or it's just not working, think outside of the box, consider a new plant. Along with the app, we do have a free book for everybody joining us today. It is online, but if we were in person, I'd be giving you the free version. But this is a fantastic book that walks you through many of the Florida-friendly landscaping plants, and it tells you what that plant desires in terms of water, sun, soil, etc. And so I was talking about some of it during my presentation. It has pictures in here that can help you better understand what plant you're looking for. So I will chat that link now so you can enjoy that book and learn more about Florida-friendly plants.
Good deal. Patrick, we have one for you. Follow-up question to the one from a minute ago. Let's say a homeowner feels they've been following UF guidelines for maintaining turf and it's failing to thrive. Could the homeowner be required to provide proof that they've actually been following all fertilization, pest control, irrigation, etc., that UF would recommend? In other words, is there a burden of proof for the homeowner to show that the turf is the wrong plant for that place, as opposed to just declining from poor care? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's the economic realities of this, and then there's the legal answer for it. So the economic reality is that if we're talking about burdens of proof, prior to a lawsuit being filed, I would prefer that the board put the burden on the homeowner to show that they are implementing Florida-friendly landscaping, rather than the association trying to prove that they are not. And that's simply because the association just doesn't have the resources to do that. Have the homeowner demonstrate why you were following Florida-friendly and how you are maintaining that property in accordance with how that landscaping is meant to be maintained. Now, legally, if you're in a lawsuit, though, let's say the association is taking legal action against the homeowner, at that point, the association is the plaintiff. So in order to build your case and to make it as strong as possible, you're going to want to prove to the judge that the homeowner is not implementing Florida-friendly landscaping. So prior to lawsuit, put the burden on the homeowner, and you're actually in the lawsuit itself, be prepared for you to be the ones to demonstrate that Florida-friendly landscaping is not being implemented.
Next question is for you as well, Patrick. If the association engages in pre-suit mediation, but the homeowner does not agree to participate, what other recourse is available to the association if they do not have a fining committee to enforce?
Yep. So a lot of our communities do not have fining committees. I would say the majority of them do not. The process at that point would be to file a lawsuit seeking an injunction against the homeowner. And we do these all the time at our firm. And basically what you're looking for is you're looking from a declaratory judgment from a judge, where the judge says that the property is not being maintained in accordance with the association's declaration. And then you get a judgment that can then be enforced, where the homeowner is required to make whatever alterations to the property are needed in order to bring it into compliance with the association's declaration. If the homeowner still doesn't do it after that judgment is in place, you can actually hold the homeowner in contempt of court. And there's a whole nother host of proceedings that can take place at that point. It typically doesn't get there, but that's ultimately what it is. It's a lawsuit seeking an injunction against the homeowner.
Okay. Homeowner installs what they consider a Florida-friendly butterfly garden without HOA approval. HOA says you didn't get approval, so you have to remove your plants. Does the homeowner have a case even though they did not pre-submit planting plans?
I'll jump in here as well. I know I've been talking a lot, but I'll keep going unless somebody else wants to. I think the answer to that is that the homeowner still has to follow the association's declaration. And if the declaration requires them to seek and receive approval before they make an alteration to the property, then the association can enforce against them. Look at it this way: the homeowner you have to give the association the opportunity to review what's taking place first, ask questions, and then make a decision on it before you just go ahead and make your changes. And from the homeowner's perspective, this is an insurance policy for you. You want to make sure that you're not going to have to remove the item that you just installed. So seek approval first. Once you've got that approval, you're off to the races at that point. And you're going to be on solid footing in case the association comes back to you afterwards and tries to get you to remove it. They already approved it. So always, if you're a homeowner, always seek the approval first, even if you're not sure that you really need to.
And I'll add on to that too, just we have a document that can help you. It's called 10 steps to working with or 10 strategies for working with your HOA to gain approval. And so it just has some ways to show your HOA what you're trying to do and accomplish with this butterfly garden. So you would want to show pictures, and you'd want to, you want to make your case for why you're making these changes, and certainly start at it with not an adversarial, approach, like try working together. And I think the results will be, much more positive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oftentimes the situations get needlessly emotional and combative between the parties. The board feels that the homeowner is trying to get away with something, and the homeowner feels that the board is preventing them from using their property in a responsible way. And if both sides just keep emotions out of it and just try to work together, chances are you're going to find some common ground.
And we have heard stories in the past of people who've had issues with their HOA, and it's gotten just so uncomfortable that even after the dispute was settled, they didn't want to even live in that community anymore, because they had fought with their neighbors and they fought with their HOA, so they weren't even comfortable living in their own home and ended up moving. So working together is what I always advise when anybody calls me ready to start that fight.
Absolutely. And I did just chat that Edith's publication you referenced, Claire, the 10 strategies for working with your homeowners association to convert to a Florida friendly yard. So definitely check that out.
When I think of that document, I think of it as good for HOA board members too, to give to their residents, say, look, we want, this is the kind of information we want before, I think it can work both ways.
All right, next question. Must fish introduced to ponds be approved by water management? I would say it does. And again, the safe answer to that is to defer to the professionals. I wouldn't introduce anything to the water personally or advise the residents to take that upon themselves. You always want to let the licensed professionals handle those tasks.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if it is a real lake, a natural water body, not a stormwater pond, it is likely that permits will have to be obtained, and there's variation. Sometimes the county issues those. Sometimes it can go through the water management district. Other times it's FWC. It just really depends. So they would likely know that information.
Good deal. Is a homeowner allowed to plant trees anywhere on their property per county guidelines without any permit? Is there a limit to how many trees? Can the HOA force them to remove trees or plants that they did not seek approval to plant?
Yeah, well, as to the limit of trees or any restrictions on removing trees, we've got two different categories of things going on here. You've got your specific jurisdiction that you live in and any requirements that they have, and then you have your association's declaration. Ultimately, the jurisdiction you live in, they're going to control on that. Think of it as that the municipal ordinances are a floor, but not a ceiling. So all of those restrictions apply to you, but your association can put additional restrictions on top of that that are not more lenient anyway that's required by your municipality. They're more stringent. They could do that if they like. But ultimately, the ordinance is going, the association can't be less stringent anyway than the ordinance. Whatever municipal ordinances at play there will ultimately control on that.
Yeah, and I think this question is actually very interesting because we typically see the opposite of that, where people are wanting to know what happens with tree removal. And so, in Seminole County, we do have a tree ordinance, and so that applies to unincorporated areas within Seminole County, and then our cities have their own kind of ways that they deal with the trees, and the HOAs as well might have a replacement or a fee that they have set up within their community. So, I have never actually seen something that limits the amount of trees per se, but it is usually the question that comes in is what happens when it comes to tree removal.
I've seen, oh, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, so I don't know the legal answer, but I know some. Am I on? Okay, but there may be some restrictions on invasive trees being installed all over your property. I'm not sure. I don't know of that in our area, but that would make sense if they were restrictions on planting invasive trees.
Absolutely. Yeah, our tree ordinance covers several species of invasive trees that are not able to be, definitely not planted and things like that. So definitely check if your municipality has a tree ordinance. It's usually available on MuniCode. MuniCode's a great website to pull up a city, a county ordinance, a fertilizer ordinance, tree ordinance. It just really has a lot of information there. That's the real, ordinances.
I found this one interesting, Patrick. If you can clarify, so something extremely similar to this situation happened in an association that I manage. Can the ARB incorporate the municipality or invasive tree guidelines if it's not written in the standards or the declaration? I don't feel like it's their job to go and research that. Essentially, they're just researching what is written in front of them. Can I plant a tree or not?
Yeah, so this gets back to the issue that I was talking about first, about what authority do you have to create these guidelines in the first place? I mean, let's assume, just for the sake of the question, that you do have the authority to do that. I'm always cautious about ARBs just kind of wholesale incorporating provisions from ordinances into their documents, because now you're going to be responsible for the enforcement of those things. when there may be another mechanism for those items to be enforced, whether that's through code enforcement or some other body. So basically, you're exposing yourself to a lot more things that you're going to have to be aware of. You've got to be comfortable taking on all of those roles then of what goes along with it. And if you're not enforcing it the same way that the municipality enforcing it, you can be called out on it from another homeowner. I mean, we see lawsuits filed all the time against ARBs and against boards for not enforcing their documents. So by bringing in additional items that are not in your documents that are from a different ordinance that technically already applies to that individual anyway, you don't really need to do that because it already applies to them, and you're just expanding your job into areas that unless you're an expert, you may not really be able to do that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Can I ask a question to Patrick? We have something that, you know, we recommend. I don't think it's used very often in Florida, but like form-based codes. So they're codes based on kind of the performance of the landscape. So you might say, you know, shrubs no more than, you know, you describe what it is you want the landscape to look at rather than kind of giving prescriptive, you know, this many trees or things like that. So do you come across many form-based codes?
Form-based as in like it's just giving generalities as to what the property is supposed to look like, just a well-maintained, well-manicured. Is that what you're referring to?
I think so. I mean, it's probably more than what we need to talk about right here. I'm just wondering, you know, if there isn't a better way, you know, that we should encourage people to move forward with, with developing their codes or trying to, you know, trying to implement.
I mean, my advice is to consult with your attorney on how you're going to be doing it. You want to make sure you have the authority to do what you're doing, and also you want to make sure that it's worded in such a way that when you're put to the test before a judge and against an attorney on the other side of it, the language that you're using is going to be something that is clear what it means, and it's actually going to be enforceable. I mean, there's an element of subjectivity that comes into all of these things because it's impossible to define every single aspect of what's going on. But you want to limit that subjectivity as much as possible to let everybody know who's reading it very clearly what they can and can't do with their property. But it's a battle, and we face attorneys on the other side all the time. So we represent communities, but there are attorneys that specialize in representing homeowners as well, and they go through those guidelines with a fine-tooth comb looking for any type of ambiguity to use against the association. So it's not an easy process, and when you're developing those, you should consult with an attorney to help you.
All right, I think we concluded all of the questions. Let's see, one last thing here. Brazilian pepper trees are on a neighboring property and spreading to our line. Who is responsible for removal of these invasive trees?
I can talk about it. I don't know which part of the tree is invading onto the property line, if whether we're the trunk of the tree or something else. I mean, just the basic common law principles in Florida are that when a branch or a root is transferring onto your property line, you are allowed to trim it back, provided that you're not going to damage the overall tree. Now, I don't know how that could change with respect to an invasive species. If you can show that it's actually damaging your property in some way, then you may have more flexibility on that as far as protecting your property in some other way, or having maybe a negligence cause of action against the homeowner that's allowing that to grow on their property.
Typically, they produce a lot of seeds, and they would seed over, you know, the fence into the yard, or, you know, are dispersed by birds and things. You know, this is definitely an issue, that invasive plants, you know, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, because once they're out there, they do spread readily, and they can be spread beyond property lines, beyond municipal county lines and things. And so, you know, I would say it's the work of all of us to educate people on invasive species, identifying those invasive species, removing them from our properties, and encouraging neighbors to do the same, that, you know, they actually impact our, not only our environment and our food webs biologically, but also economically. They pose a big, you know, problem to our agriculture and our economy. And so, you know, working to remove those, and again, working with your HOA to educate them. If you do have an area that has air potato or Brazilian pepper or any one of these category 1 invasive species, working with your board of directors and finding out, you know, how can we eradicate this from our stormwater pond or our conservation area, working in conjunction with, you know, the landholders and maybe the county or the water management districts, to make it so that it's not spreading as pervasively throughout our neighborhood. And it really is one of those things that it takes a village to address these invasive species, and being very cautious as to making sure that we only bring in Florida friendly plants, because even some of our plants that are available at nurseries and at box stores are still going to be, they might not be a category 1 or prohibited sale, but they still will become a little invasive in the environment. Making sure that we're selecting UF varieties that are not going to be invasive, or native plants or Florida friendly plants, is really paramount to mitigating this problem. Great. And with that, I mean, I think you're right, Antonio. We have addressed many of these questions.
Yeah, I think we have one left, but I think we're out of time. Out of respect for Patrick's time, I think we should cut it off. Patrick's information is in the chat. My information is available as well. If anybody has any follow-up or like to for potential services, feel free to reach out to either one of us. Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thank everyone
you
for having me as well. I appreciate the opportunity, and also it's a great idea for both homeowners and board members to be educated on these issues. We see a lot of needless controversies happen in communities, that if people just had a greater understanding of what Florida friendly landscaping is and how it really works, we could alleviate a lot of those.
Thank you so much. And just remember, we are going to be sending you the survey later today or early tomorrow. So please do take just 2 minutes to fill that out. It helps us so much. We were able to offer this webinar for free. And so the payment is essentially the survey. We really appreciate that. And I just will put in the chat as well, if you're interested in that fertilizer class, go ahead and sign up. I just put that in the link. We will be following up with an email of all the chat and follow-up information. And thank you again to all of our panelists. This has just been such a great event that we've been able to bring to you today. Again, just to close out our panel, we have Dr. Esen Momol. She's the director of the Florida Friendly Landscaping at the state office up at the UF-IFAS extension in Gainesville. And Claire Lewis, also in that office. She is the coordinator for the community, to work with community association managers, landscape architects, industry. So please do, Claire, if you don't mind putting your contact information in the chat so they can also contact you. Patrick Burton, who is Esquire with managing attorney in the Community Associations Department with the law offices of John L. DeMasi. We have Jim Helmers, who served on the landscape committee for our Sweetwater Oaks here in Seminole County. Antonio Shaw, who's with Rosetta and Company, a community association manager, and he does manage areas in Central Florida. And I'm Tina McIntyre, Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent with the UF-IFAS extension in Seminole County. And thank you, all of you, to the participants for joining us today. We will make this recording available to you, so feel free to share it with your friends, coworkers, neighbors. And with that, we'll look forward to seeing you at a future Florida Friendly workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Very good.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit I heard. I got into Q&A. This morning.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.